All right. We
Otherwise,
are now.
otherwise we're cooked.
Yeah. Well, we can just go for a few minutes, and then I'm sure that we will get people will show up. So welcome, welcome. I'm Paul Sugarman of the Instant
All right,
Shakespeare
we
Company,
are now.
and here we go
Yeah,
with the Shaw Project reading of Mary, Mary, Quite Contrary by St. John Irvine. St. John Irvine, excuse me. So anyways, before we get started, it'll just take a couple of minutes to just sort of give you a little introduction. Bill is here, so I'm going to promote him to panelist. The Instant Shakespeare Company is dedicated to the premise that Shakespeare is for everyone. And for 23 years now, we're in our 23rd season of presenting all of Shakespeare's plays every year. We've done this mainly in the New York Public Libraries over the years. And then, of course, with the pandemic, we did it through Zoom. And we're still this year sort of doing both live ones and Zoom. And because of Zoom, this offers a platform. We're very happy to be able to host other companies as well. And so with the Shaw Project, headed by David Cedar, we've been able to present a lot of really excellent readings of plays that people are probably even less familiar with than some of Shakespeare's lesser known plays. And so David, if there's anything you'd like to talk about in terms of the Shaw Project.
Well, the Shaw Project was founded in 1986. And we originally, our plan was to read all of Shaw's plays, basically in the order that they were written. And we did that. And then we decided to continue. We had a nice audience. We decided to continue doing the Shaw plays, and also doing plays by his contemporaries. So we are now instituting that a little bit here, because this is St. John Irvine is one of Shaw's contemporaries. This play dates from 1923, I believe it is. We thought something nice and light for summer, August, summer would be nice to do. I'm worrying, we're missing one actor, and I'm not quite sure. I have a feeling, I hope he's okay. He may have forgotten about this. I don't know. He's in London, so.
Yeah, well, but I just saw him yesterday. But Bill is there. Bill, can you hear us? And just if you want to just say hi so we can make sure your sound's working.
Hello, how are you?
Great.
Loud and clear?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
Bill, I may need you to read either until Angus shows up or all of his role, except maybe a little bit of problems in Act 3, but excuse me, in Act 4, the last act. We may have to fudge around a little bit, but he's the canon, Canon Considine. Fingers crossed. We can't wait too much longer for him.
Yeah, well, at this point we are. I figure we're just at least waiting for Kate.
No, that's right.
So
Need her right away.
Yeah. So, and she did come on to say that she needed a little time, and so I think that's good to give us a chance to talk about that. So, David, have you read all of Shaw's plays? Because how many was it? It's like over 50 plays, or?
Oh no, more than that, many more. It's if you include everything, including including his translation of a play by whose name escapes you right now, a foreign play, which we also did because it was translated by Shaw, and it's more like around 30.
Oh, okay. Well, because he also had a number of short plays, like his various sorts of feuds with Shakespeare.
Yeah, well, yeah, we have quite a few one acts, which combined usually did more than one.
How about his one acts? I think the one acts are usually so charming and quaint. Remember Village Wooing, David?
Oh, it's charming. I know you want to do it. Fortunately, it dates to the 1930s, so we have to wait quite a while before we can get away with doing it.
We did it before.
But we got permission from the Shaw estate.
To
do all of the plays.
It is true. I mean, and that's, I think, one of the things that's sort of interesting that I've always wanted to sort of explore more about with Shaw is how, as a socialist, though, he was still very canny in terms of sort of revising his plays so that he could re-copyright them, so that he would keep
That's right.
going. And
Yeah,
I mean,
what-
because he's lost out on a lot of them, because anything before like 1923 is all
Yeah.
public domain.
Yeah, that's what he did. He would make small changes in his plays, which automatically updated his copyright.
Mhm.
So, and that, of course, that does create problems occasionally when you're reading them. If somebody has the later edition of the play, there might be little differences in the script, which could be a problem depending on, the situation.
Yeah. Well, and I
I've
also.
heard that before.
Yeah, I also remember someone, the guy who ran Players Press out in California, whose mother was an actress who Shaw liked, and so he gave her a bunch of copies of his plays, which then, I mean, her son then sort of published, because it's like, hey, these were, Shaw gave us these, so we have so that I have the right to publish them. So
Yeah.
those were sort of his versions. And I think there's also a similar issue with, I don't think for the same reasons, but a lot of Tennessee Williams plays, he would keep revising them over the years. So
Yeah.
you have an acting edition or a revised acting edition.
You know who that actress was?
I can't think of her name right now. I can't remember her son's name either at this point. But yeah, it is interesting, and it was. And there's a lot of things that it's sort of. I found an article after while reading of the Doctor's Dilemma last month, of sort of finding out that Shaw was just so virulent-y and anti-vaxxer.
Oh yeah, he wasn't. He was. Believe it or not. I don't know how he'd fare in today's climate.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, but it's also, it's like, there's so many things. It's interesting. I mean, we have to, and that's the sort of idea of that you have to kind of have sort of appreciation for the historical time in which somebody lived. Like, I mean, pre-World War II, all of these really, great heroes of us like Shaw and H.G. Wells were really into eugenics, and it's just sort of, it's like, okay, well, there's something where somebody tries to, and you see that's like, yeah, that's not really a good idea. But at the time, people didn't know better.
Is Kate back yet?
All righty. So, well, we are still, I don't think, well, hopefully Kate would be able to join us soon, but unless you want to have somebody else, can someone else cover for her till she gets in as someone else cover, because it is, we're sort of
kind of mess up the play. I mean, we can wait a little bit longer, but we can't.
Sure, absolutely.
Who's Angus reading, just to be prepared?
The Canon Considine.
Canon Considine is what I need you to read, Bill.
All right.
I hope Angus is okay. He may have just forgotten about this or something. I don't know.
Yeah, or he may be having issues, because he was having some issues with his computer, and it took him a while to get online, but he did get online on time.
That may be true.
Yeah, I know. There's
Someone just sent a message. I don't know who it is. Said they'll be online soon.
That's Kate.
Zoom user? Okay.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Great.
But we really can't proceed without Kate.
Yeah.
What does she do? She said she's going to see patients.
She got called into
Visit
work.
clients.
Got called into work.
What does she do?
I
thought she said patients. Okay.
Well, one
I
of the
thought
things
she
she
said-
does is she wrangles horses.
Well, she didn't look like she was there to wrangle horses, though. She looked a little too. Anyways, let me just.
Well, she's an equestrian.
Yeah. Oh, I guess. Yeah.
Hope she's not having a problem with her boss saying you can't do this or something.
Let me just try. But yeah. So let's see.
Well,
So yeah, I guess hopefully But anyways, it's good. And we've done, do you know yet what you're planning on doing? Are you planning on having a September reading?
Yeah, I'm thinking right now of John Bull's Other Island.
Oh,
Play.
excellent. I'm not familiar with that one.
We'll talk about that later.
Yeah, great. So,
What's it called?
John Bull's
John
Other
Bull's
Island.
Other Island.
Yeah. Yeah, well, if we get Angus on, he can also talk about the fact of like how Great Britain is sort of becoming less great all the time, and soon we'll no longer have Scotland as part of it, and who knows, maybe even Northern Ireland will join with Ireland, and it'll just be poor old England and Wales.
Yeah,
Poor old England.
Yes, yes.
exactly.
Are you
watching the Pallisers right now? I'll tell you, the differences are amazing. What England is like today compared to back then.
Oh,
Yeah.
my mother was addicted to that. I should check that out. The Pallisers. Wait.
I hope you are all familiar with Flanders and Swan.
You bet.
Oh, I love Flanders and Swan.
Thanks to David Cedar, I am.
Yes, yes. I mean, they were just wonderful, and they had a great song. It's like they talked about the fact that whenever something good happens, it's like another triumph for Great Britain. But when something goes bad, it's like England loses again. And they had a little song for the English as opposed to Great Britain.
I not only know about them, I saw them on stage twice. So.
Oh yeah, well, I just grew up listening to their records and their recordings. It's just so.
I have
delightful.
a bunch of their songs in my collection.
Yeah, no, they're
David, did they write that bottlenose whale song you gave me?
Yes, they did. They so many great songs. I mean, I'm surprised they haven't, like, they did a sort of a cabaret of Tom Lehrer songs, but I mean, it's tough because they were just such great performers of them doing it. But I think their songs are so good that other people could do them as well.
Actually, I was in London.
They're good enough that even I could do them and get applause.
Yes, exactly.
They did a cabaret of Flanders and Swan at the I can't remember the name of the theater now. It's in Islington, but they did put together. Without them, of course, they were already. I think they were both, at least Flanders was already gone at that point.
Yeah, he died fairly young. He had a lot of
issues. Flanders and Swan stuff, including some things that Flanders and Swan wouldn't be able to do in their own performances, like their takeoff called "In the Doily Cart," which is likely for 4 or 5 people. So it's
oh wow, I've never heard of that.
Review stuff that they didn't do themselves in their own act.
Wow. Oh, that's amazing. Because I thought I'd heard all of their songs, and I didn't know there was other things like that. But,
yeah, there is a CD out that has some of that stuff on it. It's not just them; it's other people doing it.
Yeah. No, that they're brilliant. And Donald Swan, then after Flanders had passed, he did a lot of things and did a lot of wonderful Christian music as well.
Yeah.
So it's
not satirical stuff.
No. He was a musician, so he could do both things. He could do things satirical and he could do things straight, and I mean,
Is there any way we can? I guess there's no way we can even find out what Kate's status is.
Well, she's been saying in the chat about 5 minutes ago. She said, "So sorry, everyone. Should just be a few more minutes." So I think we can hold out. I mean, I'm sorry. Our apologies to the audience. I don't know who's watching on YouTube, but we have Mona there, and so sorry about that.
You want to introduce the rest of the cast, maybe?
Oh, all right. Everybody, introduce yourselves. I'll start. I'm David Cedar. I am the artistic director of the Shaw Project, and I'll be reading Albert Hobbes today.
I'm Bennett Pology. I'll be Sir Henry Considine. Harumph.
I'm Paula Hosa. I'll be Miss Mims and Jenny.
Deborah Whitfield. I'm playing Mary Westlake.
Virginia Thomas, Mrs. Considine.
Considine.
I'm Drew Bolander, and I'll be reading Jeffrey Considine.
And I'm Bill Blankenberg. I'm reading Mr. BB, possibly understudy standing by for Canon Considine.
Lady Kate is back.
Perfect. Perfect timing.
Kate, you're muted.
Hi, I'm reading for Sheila.
Are you back?
Yeah, I'm back. I'm sorry, guys.
You ready to start?
Yes, I
Okay.
am.
Introduce yourself because we just went round robin with that.
My name is Caitlin Mitchell. I'm reading for Sheila Constantine.
We're saying
Considine.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay. Well, let us start. Bill, you're on for reading the canon at the moment. And then I'm a little concerned. Probably Angus is having tech problems. Okay. Mary, Mary, Quite Contrary by St. John Irving. The scene is the garden of Hinton St. Henry Vicarage on the afternoon of a Friday in August. Hinton St. Henry is a fishing village on the south coast of England, just far enough from London, as Mrs. Considine says, to keep you in touch with the people you like and out of touch with the people you don't. Mrs. Considine, a pleasant, sensible woman of 50 or so, is sitting at a small round table in a shaded place sewing. Sheila Considine, her niece, is sitting on the other side of the table. She looks up once or twice as if about to speak, but perhaps because she is reluctant to put her thoughts plainly, or because she is inexpert in expressing them, she does not do so. Mrs. Considine reaches for the scissors.
I hope they won't be late for tea.
Who, Auntie?
Your uncles, darling.
Oh, yes.
I'd like them to be here when Mrs. Westlake arrives. I'm sure she'll feel more at ease if there's a crowd to welcome her.
Auntie, is she a good actress?
Do you mean morally, darling, or technically?
I suppose I mean both, but what I really want to know is whether she's an actress or just pretty.
Jeffrey says she's both. Why do you ask?
Curiosity. He seems very interested in her.
Well, that's natural, isn't it? When a famous actress accepts a play by a young unknown poet, he's rather inclined to take an interest in her. We're all attracted to the stage, Sheila, if we're young enough. When I was a girl, I once wrote to Mr. Wilson Barrett.
Did you, Auntie?
You're not interested, my dear.
Oh, but I...
Oh, no. Neither was he. He didn't answer my letter, so I ceased to take any further notice in the drama and married your uncle. I suppose, though, if there's anything in heredity, I must have transmitted my interest to Geoffrey, and that's why he's written a play. There's no other explanation.
Of course. I'm very glad that Mrs. Westlake accepted Geoffrey's play, only...
Only what?
Oh, nothing.
Nothing, my dear?
Well, I hope he isn't going to be too interested in her.
My dear, he's much too interested in you. Oh, yeah, yes, he is. He hasn't said anything to his father or to me, but old people are much more observant than young people imagine. And I'm sure he's very fond of you, Sheila. And I'm so glad.
Oh, Auntie, I know it isn't quite the thing for a girl to say what she feels about a man.
She wouldn't be very tactful if she did.
I'm frightfully fond of Geoffrey.
I'm sure you are. If I were your age, I should probably be very fond of him myself.
I do want him to be famous and successful, but I can't bear to hear him talking of all the time of Mrs. Westlake and her rotten temperament.
Oh, my dear child.
I'm jealous, Auntie. Horribly jealous.
No, I'm very glad to hear it, but I hope you'll be intelligently jealous. If Geoffrey falls in love with Mrs. Westlake, he will only be doing what all nice, well-bred boys ought to do.
Auntie,
She is probably a brilliant and charming woman. A nice boy ought to fall in love with such a woman at some time in his life, and it's better for him to do it before he's married than after. Really, it's a compliment to you, Sheila.
That's the sort of compliment I prefer to be without. Supposing he marries her.
He can't. She's married already.
I don't suppose that'll worry him.
Oh, Sheila, dear, nice boys don't do such things.
Oh, don't they? Nice boys are simply bad boys who haven't been found out. I didn't drive a motor ambulance in the war for nothing, Auntie.
I've always said that war was a mistake. Well, we must just hope for the best. And I think Geoffrey has common sense as well as brilliance, and that ought to be useful to him. A brilliant man ought not to marry a brilliant woman. They'd be miserable through envy of each other.
I'm not brilliant. I'm solid.
Yes, dear. That's why I want you to marry Geoffrey. You look after him all the better for not being brilliant, and he'll love you very dearly when he discovers that you aren't as clever as he is. The successful marriage is the one in which the husband believes that he's clever and the wife pretends that she's not. The result is perfect bliss for the husband. But you mustn't be too exacting. Mix your jealousy with intelligence.
Hello.
Ah, Geoffrey, we were just talking about you.
Auntie,
What were you saying?
Nothing that we'd like you to hear. What have you been doing?
Working.
Tell us what Mrs. Westlake is like, Geoffrey. Sheila wants to know.
Auntie,
Do you, Sheila?
no, I'm not interested in Mrs. Westlake.
Well, I'll tell you all about her all the same. She's an extraordinary woman.
All women are extraordinary.
Oh, no, they're not. Most women are obvious. But she's wonderful. So spontaneous, so incalculable. At one moment, she is a simple, demanding nature of a child. The next, the imperious manner of an empress.
She sounds exactly like a film actress.
I'm sure you spent the whole morning and afternoon inventing that speech.
Mother.
I hope Mrs. Westlake will like it when she hears it.
Well, I don't intend to say it to her.
No, you may not intend to, dear, but you probably will. My experience of literary people is that they rarely, never waste a phrase.
I have no intention of talking to Mrs. Westlake about herself.
Then what's she coming for?
To discuss my play. Aren't you being rather sharp this afternoon, Sheila?
I don't think so.
She wants to have a proper business talk with me. That's why she's bringing Hobbs,
Who's Mr. Hobbs?
her business manager.
I suppose he isn't her husband.
Oh, no. His name's Hobbs.
Is that a disqualification?
No, but it makes a difference, doesn't it?
Then who is Mr. Westlake?
Mrs. Westlake's husband.
Hasn't he got any other occupation?
So I don't know.
Well, what is he? Who is he?
My dear Sheila, I don't know. Feelings of delicacy prevented me from asking. He lives abroad, I think, or he's dead. Hobbs did say once that Mrs. Westlake's temperament had been too much for him, and he thought he'd be much happier if he had the whole Atlantic between him and it. That's all I know about him.
Considering how much interest you take in Mrs. Westlake, it is very strange you take so little in her husband.
There's nothing strange about that. I don't see why, just because you're interested in a man's wife, you should be interested in him.
My dear, I don't want to seem old-fashioned, but really, your conversation is almost immoral.
Funny old mother. I say, I shall have to hurry. Her train is due in 10 minutes.
I wonder if Johnson's motor car will be big enough for her. She sure to bring mountains of luggage. Those sort of people always do.
If you see your father and your Uncle Henry, tell them to hurry home.
Very well, Mother. Sheila, I don't like you when you're trying to be clever.
Oh!
Oh, la la la.
You didn't do that well, Sheila.
Can't you see he's infatuated with her?
No, I can't. He speaks very flippantly about her.
But that's the worst possible sign. Things have changed very much since your day. I first knew that Geoffrey cared for me when I overheard him saying the most insulting things about me.
Oh, my dear, he never insulted you.
Yes, he did, and I was so happy. It's all the fault of that beastly actress. I wish Uncle Henry would fall in love with her.
But, my dear, your uncle has retired from active service.
What did you say I've done?
Oh, Henry, I'm so glad you've come. Where's Peter?
I left him in the village talking to Miss Mims. I gathered that one of the Boy Scouts refused to do his good deed this morning, and she's asked Peter to put him in the more scoutly frame of mind. What were you two saying about me as I came in?
Sheila wants you to fall in love with Mrs. Westlake.
Good heavens.
Please, Uncle Henry.
But my dear Sheila.
Well, why not? It isn't right for a great hulking man like you to go about the world unmarried. Besides, you'd be doing me a kindness.
I don't want to do you a kindness, not that sort.
Sheila thinks that Geoffrey is in danger of losing his head over Mrs. Westlake, and she wants you to sacrifice yourself to save him.
Does she? Well, I don't propose to sacrifice myself for him or for anybody else. Self-sacrifice, Sheila, is no doubt an excellent virtue, but I prefer to admire it rather than to give an exhibition of it.
Well, I think you're very selfish. You lead a perfectly useless life.
Useless? I've given the best years to the service of my country. Now, let me tell you that. I lost my health and I almost lost my life when I was governor of Andabar.
Everybody knows you nearly caused a revolution.
Silence, girl! It's bad enough to have things like that printed in the gutter press, but in one's own home.
Well, it's true. And the least you can do is to compensate your country is to marry Mrs. Westlake.
I will not marry Mrs. Westlake or anybody. I've suffered enough for my country.
You've suffered nothing.
Nothing.
You're always complaining about your health, but you have a terrific appetite. I know, I've watched you.
Mildred, I appeal to you. Do I overeat myself?
Oh, no, Henry. You've got one of those robust appetites from which so many invalids seem to suffer. But I shouldn't say you were ravenous.
Thank you, Mildred. I have complete control over myself in all departments of my life. And as for this affair between Geoffrey and Mrs. Westlake, there's no need for extreme measures. I'm quite capable of dealing with it in a diplomatic manner.
Then we may expect the worst.
My dear Sheila, I will not let myself be annoyed by you. You are young and inexperienced, and you know very little about life.
I know a great deal about life. I've read the whole of Bernard Shaw's plays.
My dear, when you have acknowledged that, you acknowledge that you are completely obsolete. Now leave this matter to me. I know how to handle it.
How?
By tact. Tact, Sheila. A quality with which your generation seems to be singularly unacquainted.
My dear, can I have a large glass of water?
I'll go and get it for you, Uncle Peter.
Thank you, Sheila.
Are you ill, dear?
No, but I've just had a conversation with Miss Mims, and I feel thirsty.
Have this chair, Peter.
Oh, thank you, Henry. Have they arrived yet?
Who?
The theatricals.
Oh, my dear Peter, you mustn't call them that.
Oh, why not? They are theatrical, aren't they?
Not if they can help it. The modern actress would rather be anything than an actress, and generally is.
Have they arrived yet?
No, but they'll be here at any moment. Geoffrey's gone to meet them.
Here you are, Uncle. Straight from the tap.
Thank you, my dear. I wonder why it is that the most enthusiastic church workers always make a clergyman feel embarrassed. I know that Miss Mills is a good woman, but she makes me feel that there must have been some justification for the lions that ate the early Christians.
Oh, this must be they. Peter, come and help me welcome them.
Oh, very well, my dear. I do hope they don't be too theatrical. Anything dramatic always makes me feel uncomfortable.
Uncle Henry, I'm sorry I was so rude to you just now.
It's all right, Sheila. You're young, and all young people nowadays are rude to their elders.
I didn't mean to be rude, but I can't help pointing out things to you. Will you help me? I shan't have much chance against this actress woman.
I'll do what I can.
Come this way, Mrs. Westlake. Mind, there's a nasty little place there. That's right.
Yes, it was a nasty little place, but how beautiful your home is. I always think it's such a beautiful thing to have a beautiful home.
Oh, yes. Yes, quite so. This is my niece, Sheila Considine.
How do you do?
You must be very happy in this beautiful home.
Oh, it isn't bad.
And this is my brother-in-law, Sir Henry Considine.
I'm delighted to meet you, Mrs. Westlake. I've often seen you act.
How nice for you. I don't wonder that your son is a poet. How can anyone help being inspired in such lovely scenery? There's nothing like it on the stage. Do you write poetry, Sir Henry?
No, I can't say that I do, but I am engaged at present on a history of marriage in Andabar.
Really?
Yes, of course, the subject is not one which can be discussed in mixed company, especially when there are young and inexperienced people present, but it's very interesting.
I'm sure it is. Tell me, do they marry a great deal in Andabar?
Oh, they do excessively.
How revolting. You and I must have a little quiet talk about Andabar.
Well, I should be delighted.
You'd like to go to your room?
Thank you. Poetry is such a nice thing to write.
So I believe.
I'm sure you could do it if you tried hard enough. I wish you'd write a poem while I'm here.
You're very flattering, Mrs. Westlake.
Not at all. Anyone who can write a history of marriage ought to be able to write poetry. This way.
Keep it up, Uncle Henry. You've made an impression already.
My dear, that's nothing.
Come in, Mr. Hobbs. Come in.
Thank you.
Geoffrey will take the car and the luggage round to the back of the vicarage. Now, let me see. You don't know my niece, do you?
How do you do?
Oh, my brother, Sir Henry Considine.
Pleased to meet you, Sir Henry.
I hope you had a pleasant journey.
Not bad.
What do you think of our village, Mr. Hobbs?
Not bad, what I've seen of it. Bit too far from Shaftesbury Avenue for my taste.
From where?
Shaftesbury Avenue.
I don't quite know where that is.
Don't know where Shaftesbury Avenue is? You're English, aren't you?
Well, yes, but I am a little out of things, living in the country all year round.
Oh, yes, of course, I was forgetting that. Fancy not knowing where Shaftesbury Avenue is. I thought the heathen in his blindness knew that.
Your life must be a very interesting one, Mr. Hobbs.
Well, it is and it isn't. The theatrical business is a very tricky one, very tricky.
Yes, I'm sure it is.
I've been in it all my life, and I reckon I know something about it. I began as a call boy, and now look at me.
Yes, very remarkable.
Yes, my job is about as hard as any job. I have to keep Mrs. Westlake's imagination in its place. And let me tell you, that's damned... Oh, I beg your pardon, I'm sure.
Oh, not at all. I often say worse than that myself.
Well, it's a very hard thing to do. She lives for her art, and that's a most expensive way of living. Do you know, she took an Eastern play once, one of those pieces where it costs a fortune to undress the company.
Undress them?
Yes, they don't wear hardly anything, and it costs a lot to do it. Well, she was an empress or something, sort of a Cleopatra, you know, and she got it into her head that she ought to have a retinue of slaves.
Slaves?
Yes. Well, she goes and gives an order for 90 of them. 90 slaves. Of course, I put a stop to that. They ain't so easy to get, apart from the cost of them. No, I says to her, we'll get a couple of sailors from Cardiff. They'll do just as well and be a lot cheaper. So they was.
Oh, dear me, dear me. This is a side of theatrical life of which I had no idea.
Oh, it's a very queer profession, ours. I can tell you some things that would astonish you.
Yes, I suppose you could, but wouldn't you like to go in and see your room?
Thank you. Well, I never can understand about people in the country is what they do with themselves. In the evening, I mean.
Oh, well, we amuse ourselves in a variety of ways, don't we, Henry?
Oh, yes.
I, for example, often play a game of patience.
Well, I suppose it's all right if you've been brought up to it. This way?
If you please.
What a little toad.
Oh, my dear Sheila, you mustn't be so harsh in your judgments. I don't think you should use Mr. Hobbs' appearance as evidence against him.
Where's everybody?
Whom do you mean by everybody?
Mrs. Westlake, of course. Where is she?
Renovating herself, I believe.
She wants me to read the play to you all so that she can see what effect it has on quite ordinary people.
That's very thoughtful of her.
I'm to read the first 2 acts before tea and the rest afterwards.
Well, thank goodness there'll be an interval for refreshments.
Isn't she a lovely woman? Isn't she, Sheila?
I didn't notice.
Oh, but you must have noticed. My dear girl, she's beautiful.
Indeed.
Yes. But I'm not very keen on Hobbs, though.
No, he hasn't quite the same style of beauty, has he?
Oh, he's so patronizing. When I asked him if he liked the country, he sniffed a bit and said, well, I suppose we have it. We have to have it. Common little cockney. I must go and get the manuscript. Hobbs doesn't like poetic drama.
I imagined he was hardly likely to.
No. But Mary does.
Mary?
Yes, Mrs. Westlake. She said I might call her Mary.
And what does she propose to call you?
I didn't like to ask her. You see, she's inclined to be original in her choice of names. She calls Hobbs Chim.
Chim? Why Chim?
Short for chimpanzee. Jolly good, isn't it?
Yes, but I hope she doesn't make a habit of these contractions.
Oh, she calls everybody something or other. It's her way of putting people at their ease.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, Geoffrey, Mrs. Westlake asked me to remind you about reading the play to her. She wants it read before tea.
Not the whole of it.
No, only the first 2 acts. I've just been telling them, Mother.
She asked me your age, Henry, and whether we had a pet name for you.
Oh?
She says you look as if you knew a great deal about life.
Well, I certainly know something about it.
But she thinks it's a pity you aren't married.
Indeed. Have I any other defects?
Yes. She thinks you talk too much.
My God.
Well, you are rather a gabbler, Uncle Henry.
I am not.
Ah, my poet. But where's my play?
I'll go get it. I shan't be long.
How do you do, Sir Henry?
I haven't altered since we last met, Mrs. Westlake.
I've been hearing a great deal about your life, Sir Henry. So mysterious and full of strange adventures.
Oh, I don't think so.
You great viceroys, Sir Henry. What wonderful lives you lead.
Well, yes, perhaps, although I was not exactly a viceroy, Mrs. Westlake. Still, the governorship of Andabar was a grave responsibility.
I'm sure it was. The people you governed must have realized that.
Yes, I think they did. Are you interested in our colonial policy, Mrs. Westlake?
No. Are you?
Well, yes, it's my occupation.
Then of course you must be interested in it. How nice for you now that you've retired. How'd you do?
We've met before, Mrs. Westlake. about 5 minutes ago.
But it's so nice to meet people again, even if you haven't liked them the first time. Tell me, is it far to the colonies?
Well, it depends on which one you want to go to.
Are there a lot?
Oh, yes, some of them are a long way off, some of them aren't.
That must make it very awkward for the people who govern them. I think they ought to all be together, don't you? So that they can be governed conveniently. The only colony I know is the Isle of Man.
The Isle of Man is not a colony.
Oh, it must be. I mean, how else can you account for it? When people ask me what I think of Hall Caine, I always say, he's a colonial. That seems to explain everything.
I'm afraid, Mrs. Westlake, your knowledge of our empire is somewhat limited.
That's true. My whole view of life is limited. I've not had your advantages, Sir Henry. I haven't lived as you have. I've always said I'd love to meet one of those strong, garrulous men who've made us what we are.
Well, how do you like the country?
I love it. I said to Chim when we were coming down in the train, he was asleep, mind you, I said, Chim, wake up, look at the scenery. It's so smart. How'd you do?
I'm still quite well, thank you.
What a transparent nature she has. It must be very nice for you all.
Sheila's a dear girl, Mrs. Westlake. We're hoping that Geoffrey and she will, well.
Yes, I thought so. Does he know?
Oh, he's very fond of Sheila.
Well, she must be glad. It's so nice to think that someone is fond of you. Isn't it, Sir Henry?
Really, Miss Westlake, I haven't the slightest idea.
Oh, you won't make me believe that a man so attractive and clever as you are has never been loved.
Mrs. Westlake, you're a very astute woman, but I really can't discuss these matters.
I know. The secrets of the heart. I'm so glad you're a clergyman. I think the church is such a nice institution.
Thank you. Thank you.
Chim is an atheist.
Oh, come. I've told you more than once that I'm a Presbyterian.
I know. And it's dreadful. I mean, think of what will happen to you on the last day when you tell the authorities that you're a Presbyterian. Canon Considine, can't you do something for Chim?
My dear lady, I don't think I can intrude upon Mr. Chim's private life.
Sir. Arbs, not Chim.
I beg your pardon. I thought Mrs. Westlake called you Chim.
That's a pet name for me. My right name's Arbs.
Oh, yes, of course. But I don't think that I can do anything. If a man is a Presbyterian knowingly and willfully, he has only himself to blame.
Then, Chim, you must save yourself.
That's what I'm trying to do.
Ah, my poet at last.
Oh, I'm awfully nervous, Mrs. Westlake. Mary, I mean, at the thought of reading my play to you with everybody listening.
Well, shall I send Chim away?
Oh, no, I'd like him to hear it.
Thank you. It'll be a bit of a treat for me.
Well, we ought to arrange ourselves, I think. Let me see. Well, I think you ought to have the center of the stage.
Sit.
Technical terms, in the profession, meaning the best position or all the fat. I suppose in your business, you'd call it the pulpit.
If you sit there and I sit here, our positions will be about right, I think.
Any position will suit me.
Then if the others will just group themselves around you. Now, Geoffrey, we're quite ready.
I'm afraid I shall read it badly.
Never mind. You won't have to act it. Go on.
Joan of Arc, a poetic play.
How do you do? You're just in time to hear Geoffrey begin his play. Oh, I'm afraid we're interrupting you, Geoffrey.
Not at all. But when you're ready.
A poet ought never to be interrupted, His nature is so sensitive that the slightest disturbance upsets him. I think it must require a great deal of courage to be a poet's wife.
Oh, yes, yes.
I have never loved a poet.
Really?
I'm sure my nature would have been improved if I had loved a poet or been loved by one.
Perhaps you're right. Perhaps you're right.
In my opinion, there's nothing in it, neither passion nor publicity. A poet is so much in love with himself that he hasn't got time to love anybody else.
Oh, but Jim, think of Shelley and Byron and Shakespeare.
Shakespeare, that eyebrow. Put one of his plays on and you'll land yourself in the bankruptcy court. That's what your poetry will do for you.
Jim has no soul. I told you he was an atheist.
No, 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 no.
You're interrupting the play. Geoffrey, I apologize to you for Jim's misbehavior.
I say, look here.
Be silent. Go on, Geoffrey.
Joan of Arc, a poetic play in 5 acts.
5 acts.
Yes, Mr. Hobbs.
Too long. It's all right for the pit, of course, but think of the stalls, old man. They have to have their dinner.
I'm not going to adapt my play to suit the stall's stomach.
All right, I'm only pointing out the practical side of the question.
And now perhaps I'll be allowed to read the play?
I tell you, as a practical man of the theatre, that any play which prevents the stalls from enjoying its dinner in peace and comfort is a bad play.
Do you mean that my play is bad?
No, I haven't heard it yet.
And whose fault is that? Yours.
All I say, as a practical man, is this. Any play that begins before 8:30 is rotten.
Jim, I'm patiently waiting to hear the play.
I'm sorry I interrupted. I don't think I began it, but I'm sorry. Go on, Mr. Considine.
Joan of Arc, a poetic play in 5 acts by Geoffrey Considine.
That sounds very beautiful. Joan of Arc, a poetic play in 5 acts by Geoffrey Considine. Very beautiful. Go on.
The scene is laid in an orchard in Lorraine in the afternoon of a summer day in the year 1425.
Nearly 500 years ago. How time flies.
Joan of Arc, whose age is 13.
13? Do you mean to say Mrs. Westlake has got to be 13?
Yes, in this scene, Joan was only 13 when she first saw visions.
You can't do it.
And why not?
Well, isn't it obvious? Nobody ever believed you were only 13.
Juliet was only 14 when Romeo first met her.
I always said there was something silly about that play. Anyhow, it's ridiculous to ask her at her age.
My age? And what is my age?
I don't exactly know, but it's more than 13.
Don't you think the difficulty might be overcome by engaging a child to play Joan in the first scene?
No, I have played Juliet.
Yes, but that was years ago.
And I shall play the part of Joan of Arc. 13 or no 13. I'm an actress. I have no age.
All right, have it your own way. Only don't blame me.
I blame no one but myself for anything. I accept full responsibility for my own acts.
Well, I hope you remember that when the play's been produced. How does it end?
Joan is burned to death in Rouen.
Burned to death? Oh, that's a happy ending, if you like. That'll please the pit, that will.
But Joan of Arc was burned to death.
Yes, but that's history. Can't you make the end a bit happier? Can't you have her rescued at the last moment by her lover?
No, Mr. Hobbs, I can't.
Well, it'll be a frost then, that's all. I'm sorry to keep on interrupting like this, but I have to think of the practical side. Do you really think the British public will come to see a poetic play in 5 acts with Mary Westlake roasted alive at the end of it?
I should think a lot of people would be very glad to see that.
I don't think she likes me.
Joan of Arc, a poetic play in 5 acts by Geoffrey Considine. The scene is laid.
Please, ma'am, will you have tea here or in the drawing room?
Oh, we'll have it in the drawing room. There are so many flies and wasps about now. Won't you come in, please? Geoffrey, you can read the play afterwards.
Well, perhaps a cup of tea would be nice. What do you say, Miss Considine?
Well, this has been very interesting. I've never quite understood before how a play got produced, but I'm beginning to get an inkling of it. Just an inkling. Come along and have some tea, Mrs. Westlake. Henry?
You know, Peter, when I was in Edinburgh, we did some amateur theatricals once, and I saw a little of the practical difficulties of getting of the work. Now, if Geoffrey had consulted me about his play, I think I could have helped him to avoid some.
I'm afraid my play isn't satisfactory to you, Mrs. Westlake.
I thought you were going to call me Mary.
Yes, I know, but I'm frightfully disappointed.
Because Jim talks like a business manager. My dear, that's what he's paid to do. Come, come. That isn't the way to talk. I liked your play when you read the first version of it to me, and I'm sure I shall like it better now.
It's nice of you to say that. You know, I've thought about you all the time that I've been rewriting the play, and that Joan of Arc is really you.
How very sweet of you.
The first time I ever saw you, I liked you so much that I went and stood at the stage door until you came out.
Did you? What an unusual thing for a young man to do.
I wanted to tell you how much I loved your performance, but when you came, I couldn't speak. I felt like a fool.
Yes, I expect you did.
There was a lady with you and you kissed her.
Kissed a woman?
Yes. I wish I'd been in her place. I wanted to kiss you awfully.
Why didn't you?
Well, we'd been not introduced to each other, and I thought you'd think it rather odd of me. But I wish I had.
I'll kiss you now.
Oh, thank you.
Aren't you two coming into tea?
Oh, yes, Sheila, we're coming.
I'm sorry to interrupt your theatrical arrangements, but Auntie sent me to call you.
I say, she saw us kissing.
So she did. How dreadful for her. But how nice for me.
End of Act 1. The second act. It is the evening of the same day after dinner, and Mrs. Considine, Mrs. Westlake, and Sheila are sitting in the vicarage drawing room, waiting for coffee. The men are still in the dining room. A door leads to the rear of the house, and French windows, now open, give on the garden. Sheila is strumming rather dispiritedly on the piano, while Mrs. Considine talks to Mrs. Westlake, who is stretched on a sofa.
So you really like Geoffrey's play, Mrs. Westlake?
I think it's wonderful. But then I always think a play is wonderful when it has a good part for me.
It must be nice for an author when his leading lady likes the play.
Yes, but it's very unusual. I wonder how long they'll take to drink their coffee.
The men? I don't know.
Isn't it absurd for us to leave the men alone in the dining room?
I wonder if it is. I've often heard that after we go out, the conversation becomes less discreet.
It's not true. I've listened many times and I've heard worse in the drawing room.
Oh, my dear Mrs. Westlake.
Oh, my dear. You know very well that when we want to say things that are not quite proper, we don't need to stay in the dining room to do it. What are you playing, Sheila?
Oh, nothing. Just strumming.
You don't like me?
Mrs. Westlake, I hardly know you.
That isn't necessary. Lots of people dislike me who don't know me at all.
I'm sure you're quite mistaken about Sheila, Mrs. Westlake. Of course, she isn't demonstrative.
No, I've noticed that. But why does she dislike me?
I haven't any feeling about you.
Oh, I'd rather be disliked than ignored. Do you dislike me, Mrs. Considine?
Oh, no, I'm afraid I don't.
But surely there is someone in the house who dislikes me. I shall feel very strange and uncomfortable if there isn't. May I have some sugar in my coffee? I forgot to take some.
I'll get it for you.
Have you noticed that I have an irrelevant mind? I suppose you want to marry Geoffrey?
Really, Mrs. Westlake?
Why can't you be frank? Why can't we all be frank? I am. It's so much more fun.
Well, perhaps if we're going to be as frank as all that, I'd better shut the windows.
No, don't do that. Oh, we shall get so stuffy if you do.
Oh, perhaps you're right. Well, what were we saying?
We were trying to pass away the time agreeably until the men came.
I hope they won't be much longer.
Please, ma'am. Miss Mims would like to speak to you for a moment. I told her you were engaged, but she said it was important and she wouldn't keep you very long.
You'll excuse me, won't you, Mrs. Westlake?
Well, ask her to come in here. I should like to see someone called Mims.
Oh, well, show her in, Jenny.
Yes, ma'am.
Miss Mims is a very zealous church worker. The more disagreeable the duties are, the better she seems to like them.
But why Mims?
Well, that's her name.
Yes, but why?
Well, her father's name was Mims.
Ah, the sins of the fathers are visited upon the children.
Miss Mims.
How do you do, Miss Mims? Jenny, bring another cup and saucer. You'll have some coffee, won't you?
No, thanks. Never take stimulants.
Oh, very well, Jenny. Let me see. You don't know Mrs. Westlake?
Know her reputation, of course. How do you do?
You probably know a great deal more about my reputation than I do myself. Everybody does.
Not at all.
What a charming frock you're wearing.
This? Oh, I don't think so. I'm the local commandant of the Girl Guides, and we don't go in for charm. Our ideal is useful service.
How nice for you. And what is your name?
Mims.
Oh, I don't mean the one you can't help having, but the one you get as a Girl Guide. I once knew a man who was a Boy Scout, and his name was Sitting Bull. I wondered if you had such a name in your society. I think it would be very interesting to be called Sitting Bull, but of course that wouldn't suit you, would it?
No, not quite. We don't have such names in the Girl Guides.
I think that's a pity. Oh, I think that's a pity. How nice it would be for you if you were called Laughing Water.
I don't think it would be nice at all. I think it'd be exceedingly ridiculous. There's nothing laughable about me. But I mustn't detain you, so I'll come to the point at once. I've really come to see you, Mrs. Westlake.
Well, that's very sweet of you.
I want you to do me a favor.
Oh.
We're giving a little entertainment tonight for the Brownies.
The what?
The Brownies, the younger children who are not old enough to be admitted into the Girl Guides.
Oh, I see. I'd not heard of Brownies in that connection before. I was thinking of those funny little creatures with beards who sit on toadstools and turn the milk sour.
No, we're not a bit like that. I thought it would be a good idea if so well-known a person as yourself were to take the chair for us at the entertainment.
Oh, no, I couldn't. I should feel shy among all those Brownies, and I have a strong objection to publicity of any sort.
The notice is short, of course, but I dare say in your profession, you're used to that. It must be a very precarious occupation.
Oh, very, very. I've often wondered where my next part was coming from.
I hope you'll come tonight.
I'll ask Jim to go.
Jim?
He's my manager and a strong supporter of the Girl Guides. He's very patriotic and would do anything for the Empire. I've often heard him saying that if it were not for the Boy Scouts and the Girl Guides, he would despair of England.
Oh, Mr. Jim seems to have a very high sense of duty.
Oh, yes, he has. Oh, yes, he has. Haven't you, Chim?
Haven't I what?
A high sense of duty.
Well, what's wrong?
How do you do?
What's wrong?
Miss Mims, let me introduce you, Chim. Miss Mims, this is my manager, Miss
How do you do?
Hobbs. Miss Mims is a brownie.
No. A girl guide.
Beg your pardon. She's a girl guide.
Oh, I thought the war had broken out again. Well, it's a very good work, Miss Mims.
I knew you'd appreciate it, Chim. So I said you take the chair tonight at the entertainment in the Scouts Hall.
You said what?
I don't know quite what it is, but I think it's to reform something, and I promised you do it.
Look here.
It's very kind of you, Mr. Chim.
No, not Chim. Obbs.
I beg your pardon, Mr. Obbs.
No, not Obbs. Obbs.
Oh, I see. Hobbs.
That's right. I wish you wouldn't call me Chim in public. It misleads people.
Well, Mr. Hobbs, I'm a strong believer in the need for brightening village life. That's why I'm here. 10 years ago, I came to the conclusion that what was wrong with England was that village life was not bright enough. So I left my home in Tunbridge Wells, threw up everything, and came here. I am happy to say that my labours have not been unfruitful.
Oh, I'm sure they're all sensible of the debt we owe you, Miss Mims.
Oh, that's a great comfort, Canon, a great comfort. Do you know that when I came here 10 years ago, there was not a single gramophone in the village, and now there are 25.
Yes, that's quite true.
You have no idea of the change they've made in the village. One of the fishermen, Tom Smith, used to go to the public house and get drunk every night. Now he stays at home and plays the gramophone. Isn't that so, Canon?
Yes. Oh, yes. I have heard that his neighbours wish he would take to drink again.
Oh, jealousy, that's all. I'm glad to find a kindred spirit in you, Mr. Hobbs.
Oh.
Oh, Mrs. Westlake tells me that you take a great interest in the Empire.
I dare say. But what's all this leading to?
But I'm very grateful to you for consenting to take the chair tonight at the Girl Guides concert.
I've never had anything to do with Girl Guides.
Well, now's the time to begin. When do you want him, Miss Mims?
In 3/4 of an hour. We hold an ambulance class first.
Oh, I think you ought to go to that. I think how useful it would be, Jim, if you were to break your leg and knew how to bandage it.
I'm not in the habit of breaking my leg.
Well, perhaps the rest of you will come too.
Yes, they'll all go. You, Cannon, and all of you. You'll go and help Miss Mims brighten the village. You can't expect Jim to do it by himself.
No, I shouldn't think so. I'm not used to this sort of thing. I do much like it.
Well, then I'll see you later. So I won't say good night, but au revoir.
I'll just come and see you to the door, Miss Mims.
Oh, not at all, Cannon. I know my way about.
But I just like to see you safely out.
Look here.
How vital she is. I have never met anyone so vital as Miss Mims.
I don't care about her vitality.
Look how she persuaded you to go to her entertainment.
I wasn't persuaded. I was humbugged into it by you. I've a good mind not to go.
You must go. It's no good cutting off your nose to spite somebody else's face. And I dare say Mr. Tom Smith will let you play his gramophone.
I hope, Mrs. Westlake, this entertainment isn't going to bore you.
I'm not going.
But you said you were.
No, I said you were. All of you. But I didn't say I was. I'm going out in a boat with Geoffrey.
With me?
It's rather late for boating.
Oh, no, there's a moon, isn't there? Of course, if you don't wish to take me.
Oh, no, but I do. Only that was the first I'd heard of the idea.
Well, there has to be a first time of hearing everything. I couldn't tell you before because Chim was so full of his girl guides.
They aren't my girl guides. What do you want to go out in a boat for when you don't need to?
Well, there's a sea about, and I might as well go on it, especially when you're all going to leave me alone.
Who's leaving you alone?
I heard you making arrangements with Miss Mims. You seem very fond of Miss Mims, Chim. I heard you making arrangements to leave me here by myself.
I never. I appeal to you all.
You asked all of them to go except me.
I never said one word.
Well, then she did. Or somebody did. I felt quite hurt about it, but I didn't show that I was hurt.
No, you didn't.
I just said to myself, well, if they're going to neglect me like this, I shall go out in a boat, a little boat with Geoffrey, and think of Joan of Arc.
I give it up. I came into this room not 2 minutes ago, never having heard of Miss Mims, and now I'm her bosom friend and a leader of the Girl Guides. Why didn't she say stay in Tunbridge Wells and brighten that up a bit?
A remarkable woman, Miss Mims. Yes, very remarkable. A little exhausting, perhaps, but full of energy. Full of energy.
Where's Sir Henry?
No, he went into the garden to meditate.
I should like to do that.
Well, why not? The night is quite warm and the moon is shining very prettily on the sea.
Look how the floor of heaven is thick inlaid with patterns of bright gold.
Yes, quite so. A remarkable poet, Shakespeare was.
She's very intense tonight, very intense.
Is that a normal way of behaving, Mr. Hobbs?
Oh, yes. You know, if she was to behave in what they call a natural manner, people would say she was putting it on.
She seems to like your play, Geoffrey.
Yes, I think she does. What do you think of it, Hobbs?
Well, it's hard to say. It might be a success if you were to alter it a bit.
Alter it?
But what the public wants nowadays is excitement. Anything with a lot of blood and torture in it. Now, if you were to cut out all the poetry and put in a lot of more torture, I should say your play would be a success.
I'm afraid you're a cynic, Mr. Hobbs.
No, I'm a businessman. I have a play now. I didn't write it myself, mind you. You know Beebe.
Yes, he writes the worst plays in the world.
That's all very fine. They may be rotten, but they're successful. And that's the principal thing. Now, he's written a play that would suit her down to the ground, but she won't look at it.
She told me about it. It sounds terrible. All about a baboon.
A baboon?
Well, yes, that's it. I'll tell you, that's a play. You listen to the plot and then tell me if it isn't a winner. The heroine, that's her part, is a girl that gets cast away on an island in the Pacific. See? Nothing but her evening dress. The island is uninhabited except for one man who's never seen a woman before. He's really a white man, see, but he thinks he's a baboon.
What a curious delusion, Mr. Hobbs.
No, not when you understand the facts of the case. You see, he was shipwrecked too when he was a baby and washed ashore on this island where he was adopted by a female baboon that had lost her offspring. And he grew up there leading a wild life, you know, climbing trees just like a monkey and living on coconuts and bananas. And he sees her and then he begins to feel the call of civilization.
What a play.
I'll bet you anything you like the flappers will stand 10 deep to see it. Of course, we'd have to have a professional acrobat for the baboon.
I don't think I'd like a baboon for my fiancé.
Well, it'd be a bit of a novelty anyhow. You know, you don't realize the dullness of young women's lives nowadays. Going up to the city every day of the Underground Railway, typing the same dull letters week after week, and being followed about by the same dull clerks until they marry one out of sheer desperation. Well, I mean to say, it brings a little colour and excitement into their lives to see a play by Beebe.
Shall we go and join the others in the garden?
I think I'll just go upstairs and collect my thoughts a bit. I've got to make a speech about about the Girl Guides tonight. I wouldn't like to put my foot in it. That's about what I'm going to do.
I'm sure you'll make a very good speech. Sheila.
Presently, Auntie.
Very well, my dear.
Mr. Hobbs,
Yes, Miss Considine?
I want to ask you a few questions.
Oh, now?
Yes, please. I won't keep you long.
Very well, fire away.
Will you promise to answer my questions?
I'll answer anything in reason.
Has Mrs. Westlake ever been in love before?
Why? Is she in love now?
I don't know. I want to find out. Has she?
Of course she has. A woman with her powers of expression is never out of love.
Has she always loved the same person?
I didn't say that. I said she's never been out of love.
Do you think she'd make a man happy?
No, I don't. I know she wouldn't.
Are you her husband?
Good heavens, no. She hasn't got a husband.
Has she ever had one?
Oh, yes. All actresses have a husband in some time or other. Her husband's dead.
Oh, how dreadful.
I don't know so much. It was a happy release from all I can hear. It's a bit strenuous living with Mrs. Westlake.
How do you know?
But, how do I know? Look here, Miss Considine. I didn't come here to discuss the passions of love, but the finance of the drama. See, don't you go and make no mistake about Mrs. Westlake and me. I'm a business manager, not a amorata, see?
Mr. Hobbs, it isn't any good trying to impress me with anger and indignation. I'm a modern girl, and I know something about life. My experience is that when people are very indignant, they are nearly always guilty.
Oh, well, let me tell you that I'm indignant and innocent. See, I've got a good mind to tell your uncle of you. A young girl like you putting nasty thoughts in a man's head.
I'm sorry, Mr. Hobbs. I didn't mean to be offensive. Only I'm so unhappy.
Oh, what are you unhappy about?
Mr. Hobbs, are you my friend?
Well, I don't know. I'd like to know what you want me to be your friend for first. Last time a young lady made that remark to me, I had to get my wife to speak to her.
I mean, Mr. Hobbs, I'm going to trust you.
Well, don't trust me too much. I'm not asking for your confidence, you know.
I'm in love with Geoffrey.
Very nice, too.
But I'm afraid he's becoming infatuated with Mrs. Westlake.
Oh, I see. You're jealous of her.
Yes.
And like a really nice woman, you try to blacken her character.
I didn't mean to be unkind, but I must fight for my own, mustn't I? If you'd ever been in love, you'd know how unscrupulous it makes you.
I'm in love with my wife. That astonishes you, doesn't it? Well, a lot of people love their wives, you know, though I don't suppose any modern girl believe it.
Well, we haven't had much cause to believe it, have we?
I don't like to hear you talking like that. I'm old-fashioned, I am, and I like to think of young girls having young minds. If you didn't read so much about life, Miss Considine, you'd know a lot more about it. Now, take my advice. Whatever else you do, don't let Mrs. Westlake see you're jealous of her. It'll be like fuel to the fire if you do. I don't suppose for a minute that she's in love with him.
I saw her kissing him.
Oh, kiss him. That's nothing. It's only a habit.
Well, what am I to do? I'm sure he's falling in love with her. He's hardly taken any notice of me since she arrived. And before she came here, he used to talk to me quite often.
Don't do anything. I've known Mary Westlake for years, and I tell you, Miss Considine, that I've only kept my sanity by pretending she didn't really exist. She drove two managers into an early grave because they let themselves be upset by her. I said to myself when I became a manager, Albert, I said, that's my name, Albert. I was christened after the Prince Consort, Albert the Good. Albert, I said, if you don't fancy an early grave, you'll treat that woman as a woman ought to be treated. Pretend she isn't there. She don't want your young man, but she'd like you to think she does. Now, if you don't mind, I'll just go and think out a few elevating remarks for the Girl Guides.
Thank you, Mr. Hobbs.
Cheers. And believe me, you don't really know any more about life than your grandmother did. You'll learn a lot more about it when you realize that. Au revoir.
I say, Sheila, aren't you coming out?
Do you want me, Geoffrey?
Well, of course I do. What a question to ask. We all want you. Mrs. Westlake sent me to fetch you.
Oh, you only came because she sent you.
My dear Sheila, don't be silly.
I'm not silly, but I don't choose to be neglected just because a middle-aged actress made eyes at you.
What on earth's the matter with you?
You know perfectly well.
I know that you're very sulky.
I'm not sulky.
Excuse me, Sheila, but you are. However, I don't propose to take any notice of your sulks.
Oh, indeed?
Are you coming out?
No thanks.
Very well, then. What's the matter, Sheila?
Nothing. Why?
Well, you're not being very agreeable.
Does that matter? You've had Mrs. Westlake to be all agreeable to you all afternoon and evening, and presently you'll be going out in the boat with her. You've hardly spoken to me since she arrived.
Oh, come, Sheila.
Not that I care, of course. Not in the least.
Well, then why make all this shindy? Are you coming or not?
No,
Very well. I shan't ask you again.
of course. After that, I shall simply wither away.
My dear Sheila, when you're older and have more experience with life, you will realize that sarcasm is very unsuitable to women. I don't know what Mrs. Westlake will think of your ridiculous behavior.
I don't care what Mrs. Westlake thinks of me. I take no interest in her. She's simply an elderly, ogling, self-indulgent, out-of-date actress who can't help splashing her sex about as if she were distributing handbills. She's just amusing herself with you. And of course, you being a conceited young idiot, she takes you in.
Sheila!
But she couldn't take Uncle Henry in. He's a man of the world, not an overgrown infant prodigy. He wouldn't even come into the drawing room after dinner, but went for a walk by himself. But you, of course, had to come and slop over her. And let me tell you this, Geoffrey, you can say what you like, but she is middle-aged. She wouldn't be running after you if she weren't.
She's not running after me.
Well, you're running after her then, and she's letting you. It's the same thing.
Have you anything else to say?
No, that's all at present. And now you can go and do your moonlight paddling with her.
What a long time you've been, Geoffrey. Is it so hard to tear yourself away from Sheila? Oh, you've struck a wrong note.
Not the first one either.
Isn't it? Oh, I'm sure that's not true. Your playing sounded very pleasant from the garden, Sheila. I just came to tell you that Sir Henry has asked me to go out in the boat with him, and I wondered whether you'd mind.
Yes, I do mind. Very much. I think it's chic on his part to ask you when he knows you've arranged to go out with me, and I shall tell him so.
Oh, but you mustn't quarrel over me. Besides, he didn't quite ask me, but I thought he perhaps might like to.
Well, he can't. If you'll just go and get a warm wrap, I'll go down to the beach and get the boat ready.
Very well, I don't want to upset anybody's plans. I only wish to please everybody.
It can't be done. Don't be long.
Why didn't you come out and join us, Sheila?
I didn't want to.
Well, of course, that's a very good reason. What a nice man your Uncle Henry is.
Do you think so?
Yes, don't you?
Oh, he's all right for an uncle.
I'm sure he'd be equally nice for a husband.
Do you?
Yes. I must go and get my wrap. Oh, by the way, Sheila, I may be an actress, but I'm not middle-aged.
Mrs. Westlake.
I overheard everything. I always listen.
I say, where's Mrs. Westlake?
Gone to get a wrap.
What is this about my going out on a boat with her?
Aren't you?
The first I heard of it was when Geoffrey came in and told me I couldn't.
Uncle Henry, do go with her. I'm sure she's fond of you.
Fond of me? Why should she be?
I don't know, but she just told me that you're the most interesting man she's ever known.
Oh,
She said she'd learnt more from listening to you for 5 minutes than she'd ever learned from anyone else in her life. That shows, doesn't it?
well, I certainly have considerable powers of explicit statement.
That's what she said. You make everything so clear.
And yet I thought she was less interested in the state of Andobar than she ought to have been. Evidently, I was wrong.
You're too modest, Uncle Henry. You don't realize how very interesting you are. And attractive.
Oh, I don't know.
Jeffrey's gone down to the beach to get the boat ready. And then he's coming back for her. Why don't you go and why don't you and she go out by the front way while he comes up by the back? She'd much rather go with you. I'm sure she would. After all, you're a man and he's only a boy.
Well, that's quite true. But rowing about on the sea at this time of night doesn't agree with me.
Please, Uncle Henry, for my sake.
Oh, you only want me to take her out so that you can rescue Jeffrey from her.
No, Uncle Henry, not altogether. I want her to enjoy herself, and I'm sure she'll be happier on the sea with you than with Jeffrey. And when he sees that she's more interested in you, quite naturally, of course, then he won't be so keen on her.
Yes, there is something in that.
I'm terribly fond of Jeffrey, Uncle Henry, and I don't want him to slip through my fingers.
What a very unromantic way to put it, Sheila.
We haven't time to be romantic nowadays, Uncle. I'm in love with Jeffrey. I don't care who knows it. And I shall marry him by hook or crook.
But does he love you?
It's enough for me that I love him. But even if I didn't, I'm not going to be a superfluous woman if I can help it. You will take her out in the boat, Uncle Henry, won't you?
Well, I'll see. Ah, Mrs. Westlake.
Ah, Sir Henry.
It's been very charming to have you here with us.
I believe you're going to make love to me.
My dear Mrs. Westlake.
You may call me Mary.
My dear lady. I must have expressed myself very crudely. I hardly thought.
Don't you like me then?
Well, of course I like you. I can hardly help it, can I?
Oh, please don't be diplomatic, Sir Henry. Be a plain, blunt man for once and admit that you are going to make love to me.
I hardly know what to say. I must admit I'm not insensitive to your attractive qualities, Mrs. Westlake.
I think that's such a nice way to put it. I'm afraid your sense of finesse, Sir Henry, must make me seem a very crude, impulsive woman.
No, not at all. I sometimes think that my diplomatic training may have made me a trifle hypocritical.
No, it could never do that. What I admire so much in you is your self-control. You're so imperturbable, calm. I understand the works of Kipling far better now that I know you.
Oh, you know you're flattering me.
Oh, no, I'm not. You don't realize how splendid it is for a woman like me to have a friend like you. You are my friend, aren't you?
I'm proud to think that you wish me to be.
You're so sure of yourself that I feel I could depend upon you in any trouble or misfortune for advice.
I had no idea you felt for me like this. I thought you were rather smitten by my nephew, Geoffrey.
Oh, Geoffrey is a very nice boy, but
Yes.
only a boy.
Yes, he's young and crude. I quite understand.
Every woman feels attracted by youth, Sir Henry. But in time of trouble, she needs the comfort and support of a strong man, one who understands the world and can sympathize with her sorrows.
Are you in trouble, Mrs. Westlake?
I'm always in trouble.
Let me help you.
Oh, I couldn't. My pride prevents me. I'm very proud, Sir Henry. If I could only tell you all that I've endured in my life.
Tell me everything. Pour it out. Damn. I think they're coming in. Can we meet somewhere? I won't go to the concert.
But I'm going out with Geoffrey.
Don't go.
But I want to go out on the sea in a little boat.
I've a good mind to come too.
Geoffrey will be there.
couldn't we give him the slip?
Oh, Sir Henry.
Well, what's to prevent us from going out this way while they come in that? And then we'll go down to the beach and push off.
How resourceful you are.
No, that's nothing. Will you come?
Yes, I'll go anywhere with you.
Well, then come along.
Hello.
You're
Where are
ready?
you two off to?
Miss Westlake and I are going on ahead, Hobbs. Just tell the others, will you?
Now, I wonder what the hell she's up to.
Yeah, you're ready, Mr. Hobbs. We won't be a second. Have you seen my brother? He ought to be getting ready too.
He told me to tell you he'd gone on ahead.
Gone on ahead by himself?
No, he got Mrs. Westlake with him.
God. Oh. But Mrs. Westlake isn't going to the concert.
No more she ain't. Perhaps he's taken her down to the boat and he'll come on afterwards.
Perhaps. Come along, Sheila. We must get ready.
Do they say where they were going?
They said they were going on ahead and they asked me to tell you. That's all I know.
Good.
Now, why did she say good like that?
I don't know. And I've made it a principle in life not to waste time trying to understand what any woman means when she says good like that.
Hello, haven't you gone yet? You'll be late.
Oh, we're just off, my boy.
Where's Miss Westlake?
She's gone off with your Uncle Henry.
Gone off with Uncle Henry.
Yes, it's about time we were off too.
Yes, I'll just go and put my coat on.
I say, Hobbs, what do you mean when you said Mrs. Westlake had gone off with my uncle?
Exactly what I said. They've gone off together.
Yeah, they're waiting for you, sir.
Oh, yes.
Jenny, have you seen Mrs. Westlake and Sir Henry?
Oh, yes, sir. They went down to the beach together, went off in a boat.
Went off in the boat?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Jenny.
I thought she was going out with you.
So did I.
Well, she seems to have changed her mind. You better come along with us and have a pleasant evening with the girl guides.
No, thanks. I'll stay here.
Just as you please. It'll probably be more amusing. Good night.
Good night. Damn, Uncle Henry.
And curtain. Let's take a 10-minute break and then proceed.
Hey, so yeah. Hey, Ben.
Is if you, I didn't want to post it. I think if Angus, sorry, clicks out and in, he might fix that problem.
Did you mean Sam?
Yeah, Angus, can you hear us? What seems to be the problem?
Yeah.
Your connection's weak, Angus. If you click out and in, you might fix it.
The problem, yeah, let me try that. The problem is
You
I'm
wouldn't
having
hear
to.
it, but we're getting a lot of clicks in and out.
What I'm trying to get is
You might have to like.
I'm having to.
Go ahead.
I can't get Zoom to work independently. It'll only work on the browser, and that's cutting out a lot of the options. Let me opt out, and I'll see what I can.
Also,
see
if
if I can
you
start it up again.
if you leave your internet and then come back in, sometimes that fixes it as well. In other words, disconnect the internet and reconnect it.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we've got about 9.5 minutes left, so you can do all those things.
I will deal with that. I will.
No pressure. 9
that.
minutes and 25 seconds.
So, yes, It is such a wonderful, thing. And many of us were talking earlier about the difficulty with these internet connections, but we just rely on it so much, and it is really pretty remarkable that we can do this thing. We can have, Drew out in California and Angus in London, and everybody from all over participating together, which is really terrific. And so you can get familiar with this play that I never even heard of before. So
Yeah, I didn't either.
And
I got to do one from the group in England, the show must go online.
uh-huh.
I did a couple with them, and they had one performance. We had one person in Texas, one in California, one in South Korea, a bunch in Europe, of course. It's great. The guy in South Korea was like up at 4 a.m. doing this.
Yeah. Well, we've had someone who's participated a few times from, I believe they were in New Zealand. So yeah, it is wonderful that we can all be connected in this way, but there's also all of the challenges of putting in the infrastructure, since that is one of the things that is challenging.
Long before the pandemic, I once did a comedy thing with another actor who was in Colorado, and we rehearsed online. We couldn't figure out why it didn't feel funny, and it was because there's that little delay. So the timing was never there until we met in person. That's almost fixed now. They got this really nailed.
Yeah. The one thing that I still think that can't quite work is like singing together.
No.
Still a little bit off. That can be rather disconcerting. But yeah, and I think it's great as people do this more and more, you get sort of used to the way it works. So that because also if you do speak too quickly, sometimes it doesn't come through as clearly. So.
Well, what's really important about all this technological innovation, of course, as everybody knows, is the sound, the background noise cancellation. Zoom has it, Skype has it, and therefore I can sit and talk this quietly in a crowded pub to my friends, and they can hear me, and they don't hear any background noise. So I can do all my work from pubs.
Yeah, no, it's great. I think that's one of the things, and also because we can do a lot of work remotely with this kind of technology, and that is a really environmentally sound practice, and that we've got as well. It's so funny. California isn't so hot now. I guess they're worried about flooding at this point, but I know Angus yesterday was talking about how hot it was there, and of course in Europe, the only things he was saying that in Rome he'd seen the only thing that was air conditioned was the American embassy. That it's just Americans, we just sort of expect air conditioning and we demand it, but in Europe they don't have it, and with this heat it makes it really difficult there. But yeah, so we have about 5 more minutes. We will have, so it's exciting. Next month, John Bull's Other Island. We don't have the date for it yet, but that's what David said earlier. He was planning for the Shaw Project in September. And then we have a number of instant Shakespeare readings going on, mostly on Zoom. We have this.
You're going to be back in the libraries in live readings in the fall?
Yeah, we have been, and we are. Actually, in August, we just have one live reading, which will be on the 27th at the Bloomingdale branch, which, despite numerous previous attempts, will be our first live reading at the Bloomingdale branch this year, which is up on 150 West 100th Street and has a really lovely space for it. They were closed for several years for renovations, and I haven't been seeing it since the renovations. But then we had one scheduled initially that then the contract hadn't been worked out, so we had to move it to Zoom. And then we were going to do another reading, and then they had a pipe burst and they were closed for about 6 weeks. And we were very fortunate that the Morningside Heights Library was able to step in and.
Were any of these readings Macbeth? It sounds cursed.
Yeah, no, actually we did that play very early in the year. Stephen Brown had put together a reading of that, which is on Zoom, and which went relatively without a hitch. I mean, we have different sort of Zoom problems that come up at different times. Last week with our reading of Edward III, we had somebody who we could hear them, but they couldn't hear us. So it made it difficult for them to come in their queues on time. And the way they solved it was they were online both with their phone and their computer, and there was a little bit of background noise from that. But yeah, there are various challenges. I mean, various challenges with Zoom, and we're still seeing when Angus will be back from his restarting, because of course it's like if Zoom, you restart it, then restart the browser, then restart the computer, and hopefully things will get better. But that always first law of troubleshooting: turn it off, turn it on again.
I've been having problems with my my internet cutting out on me.
You know, one of the benefits of being the playmaster, I see that part you gave yourself there, Dave.
I beg your pardon?
Benefits of being playmaster, I see the part you gave yourself.
Oh, I read it before when we did the play as well. So
Oh, excuses.
no.
I'll just give myself the juiciest one in the play, because I'm in charge.
A lot of that was the juiciest, but yeah, I couldn't. I've had suddenly my Wi-Fi will cut out, and oddly enough, when that cuts out now, I mean, the internet cuts out on me, my phone has been cutting out as well. So
Oh, your phone may be set to make calls over the Wi-Fi. Mine is.
really?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. That's why they're able to give such good deals, because it's a VoIP, voice over internet phone lines. You know that you have things because it's making things digital rather than analog. You know, so as opposed to having like the sort of conventional phone line. Well, I mean, I don't know if your landline even has that issue, or is it a cell phone?
no, it's not a cell phone. That's my landline I'm talking about.
Oh,
Wow.
I just
No.
got a new cell phone, which
cuts it
I'm
up. That's weird.
mastering at this point.
That is weird.
I had to switch because the T-Mobile went over to the 5K or 5G, whatever it is.
But why did you have to change?
And I have to, that's usual, and I have a new technology to learn. It takes me a while.
But why did you have to change? Because they switched to 5G.
T-Mobile made us turn in our old phones and get new ones. I had to do it.
Oh,
Anyway, are we all back?
Angus is not back yet. So is he at the beginning of this, or
That's the first line in the next act.
Okay, well then. Oh wait, let's see. Did he come in on an attendee? No. Oh, no. Let's see. Did we lose Caitlin? Oh yeah. Okay, she's here as Caitlin came back in again under an attendee, so she's coming back as a panelist now. So we're waiting on Angus at this point. Welcome back, Caitlin, and so we just hope that Angus will be with us shortly.
Sorry, I'm home now. No more disruptions.
Oh, okay. That was fast.
Yeah, I was one stop away.
All right. We just need Angus. Since he and Jeffrey start this act.
Yeah, he was having some issues, and so.
What page is this act starting on?
Act 3, we're up to. Yep.
Thank you.
Got a little late start, so we're going to end a little later than I anticipated.
Is this also a 5-act play, like the reading we don't get to hear of the
4-act play.
Joan of Arc?
No, it's a 4-act play.
Okay. Yeah. Well, so yeah.
Hey, I saw Dougie.
just watching.
Certainly as long as any version of Joan of Arc that I've ever heard of.
Hey.
Hello.
Yeah.
We have a little puppy there.
Yeah, it's not mine. It's my boyfriend's dog. I just watching him.
Cutie.
Oh,
Cutie.
Cute.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I missed it. We starting?
Well, we're waiting for Angus because he's got the
Relating for
first
Angus,
line.
he has the first scene.
So we kind of need him back.
Well, I can do a good Angus.
Yeah,
Or Angus
Not
playing
fair.
these kinds of roles.
Yeah, well, so yeah, this is great. I mean, it's wonderful that we're able to get to know these plays that otherwise we're not familiar with.
Yeah.
Just to find out, I mean, looking at different times in history, sort of plays about the theater and
Yeah.
how much they are sort of specific to the time and also universal in a lot of ways.
oh
It's,
yeah. I love the way he gets in digs at both Shakespeare and this thing.
That's right. Even though, I mean, there's so many Shakespeare companies and so much, I mean, that Shakespeare has often been quite good for business. And that's one of the reasons his work continues to endure, as it can be quite successful. But yeah, and I mean, the thing is, though, is that it's like it's so difficult for companies, I mean, to do plays that people don't know, and it's so important for them to want to do new plays, and it's very difficult to do that, and then to get other plays that aren't Shakespeare don't get known. I mean, like and with Shaw, even we just get like the very sort of I mean, like Arms in the Man, Misalliance, Mrs. Warren's Profession,
Yeah, exactly.
Drake House, and
Yeah.
and that it's
A lot of his rarer ones don't get done very often at all.
Mhm.
And some of them are very good.
Yeah, no, it's
No. They're all, I mean, some of his little skits and things are kind of silly, but
Kind of what?
but most of his stuff is good. Yeah, so
Most of his little skits are kind of what, Dave?
I said, so no, I was just saying some of his little skit type things are kind of silly, but but still fun.
Yeah, well, it is sort of a very interesting sort of transition, sort of that he went from sort of being a critic and like a great champion of Ibsen, writing about plays, to also sort of writing his own plays and becoming, and so he always had a lot of other concerns and ideas, and it's very difficult. I mean, it's pretty rare for plays to sort of express as much and as many kind of ideas as he does. I really enjoyed your last reading of The Doctor's Dilemma, which was,
that was fun.
Yeah.
Angus, are you
interesting.
still not here?
Angus is still not here, so I don't know if you want to have someone else cover for him until he gets here and
I
gets
don't like that
started,
idea,
or-
but we may have to if he doesn't get here very soon, because we don't want to be finishing at 5 o'clock.
Yeah. Well, so let's see. I'm just checking. I don't think I've gotten any emails from him.
Because we're almost exactly halfway through the play at this point.
No, let me just try sending him another invite to it so we can make sure he gets it, because we were also a little late getting started. But so. But yeah, hopefully he will be with us shortly.
If not, we may have to go on with Bill. Are you there? Is Bill around?
Yes.
Yeah, it's right there.
Okay. I might
I'm gonna
have
take
to
over
have-
until he gets back on.
Oh wait, no. He looks like he's here. He came in as a attendee. I am promoting him to
There you
panelist,
go. All right.
and we should be hopefully. Well, let's see if his sound all works, and we can get going. It's taking a moment for him to get changed over to panelist. Okay, try what it's again. To let the canon. The canon is here. He's just in the waiting room, and the butler is delayed and letting him in. So hopefully, okay, yes, he will be rejoining as a panelist. So,
Are you ready?
Angus, are you with us? Let's just get a little sound check before we start. Make sure he's really here. Angus, right, he's now here listed as a panelist, but he's and there we have him. Oh.
Okay. No.
Come on.
There it
There.
is.
Right.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
Struggle on.
I'm going to introduce
Okay.
the third act. Act 3. The time is the next morning, Saturday, before breakfast, and the scene is again the drawing room. Canon Considine is outside the window reading the morning paper. Geoffrey enters by the door.
Geoffrey, good morning.
Good morning, Father.
Have you seen your Uncle Henry?
No, but I very much want to. I shall have something to say to him when I do see him.
Not quite accustomed to genial self morning, my boy.
Well, don't you think he behaved very badly last night, sneaking off with Mrs. Westlake when she promised to go out with me?
Not an authority, these men, Geoffrey, although in my youth I had as much dash in me as anyone. At what time did they get back?
I don't know. I was so fed up with their behavior, I simply went to bed. What was Hobbs' speech like?
Oh, my dear boy, deplorable. He addressed the girl guides as they were members of the Masonic Society. Miss Mims seemed to like it. She said his speech was greedy. I'm inclined to think that there is more beneath the surface of Miss Mims than either you or I suspect. Oh, Jenny, do you know at what time Mrs. Westlake and Sir Henry came home last night?
They didn't come home, sir.
What?
They did come?
They weren't in their rooms when I took the hot water this morning.
I say, Father.
Oh, I expect they got up early and went for a walk.
I don't think Mrs. Westlake ever gets up early, and I'm sure she doesn't care for walks.
The beds weren't slept in, sir.
Then they must have been up all night.
Yes, sir.
Good heavens, I hope they haven't had an accident.
Well, I'm inclined to hope that they have. There's no other excuse for them.
We must get up a search party at once. Oh, Hobbs, Mrs. Westlake's been out all night.
That doesn't surprise me.
It's in time for fooling. My uncle was with her.
I guessed that. She isn't likely to be out all night by herself.
But don't you understand, man? They might have been drowned.
Oh, no, not Mary Westlake.
Oh, you might be right about Mrs. Wake, Mr. Hobbs, but not so sure about my brother. We'll have to make some inquiries. Ah, Sheila, my dear.
Yes, Uncle Peter?
Just go and tell your aunt, will you, my dear, that Miss Westlake and your Uncle Henry have been out all night.
Both of them?
Yes, my dear, and together instead of separately. ask your aunt what we're to do about it.
Oh, I will, Uncle. Indeed, I will.
I'm afraid she hardly appreciates the gravity of the situation. It's so unlike Henry to do anything unusual.
I can't say the same for Mrs. Westlake.
Come along, Hobbs. Let's go down to the village.
About having breakfast first.
Well, how can you stand there and talk about food when Mary may be floating about in the sea?
No, I don't think so. Your Uncle Henry, perhaps. Mrs. Westlake, no.
You don't know my brother, Mr. Hobbs.
No, but I know Mrs. Westlake. The flood itself wouldn't have drowned her.
Well, if they aren't drowned, where are they?
Somewhere they oughtn't to be.
What's this about Mrs. Westlake and Henry?
They've been out all night, my dear. Geoffrey thinks they've had an accident, been drowned or something like that. But Mr. Hobbs here is more optimistic.
I didn't say I was optimistic. I said I didn't believe Mrs. Westlake was drowned.
Well, that's optimistic, isn't it?
Depends on your point of view.
Didn't they come back last night?
Apparently not. We were so late in returning from the concert that I, like all of you, thought they'd gone to bed.
When I think of my speech, I almost wish I'd gone out in a boat and got lost too.
Oh, I can't bear this suspense. How can you all stand there chattering when anything may have happened to her?
And equally, my boy, to your Uncle Henry.
I'm terribly anxious about her.
That's just what she'd like us all to be. Wouldn't surprise me if she worked the whole thing to upset us.
Oh, I hate to hear you talking like that, Hobbs. They must have had an accident. No one could stay out all night with Uncle Henry on purpose.
Well, of course, you know your Uncle Henry better than I do.
Go down to the village at once, Geoffrey, and tell the fishermen what happened.
Yes, Mother.
Peter.
Yes, my dear.
You'd better go and tell the policeman.
Oh, don't bring the police into it.
Go along, Peter.
Very well, my dear. There hasn't been any crime in Hinton St. Henry during the whole period that I have been vicar. I hope the policeman won't lose his head. Oh, my dear, I ought to mention the matter to Miss Mims.
Well, personally, I think she's the last person to mention anything to.
I think we'd better leave Miss Mims out of it, Peter.
Well, that will be very difficult, I'm afraid. However, we must just do our best. Are you coming, Hobbs?
I don't think it's necessary, you know.
You don't seem very anxious about Mrs. Westlake.
I can't bring myself to believe anything's happened to her. It don't seem somehow as if anything could happen to her.
Well, of course, it's always desirable to put a brave face on things. I beg your pardon? Sheila?
Sheila?
I beg your pardon?
Here they are, coming up the back way.
Who, my dear?
Mrs. Westlake and Uncle Henry. They do look funny.
Ah, then they aren't drowned.
I told you they weren't.
Oh, what a glorious night we've had.
I thought as much.
I'm afraid you must have had a dreadful experience.
No, it was wonderful. It was the greatest adventure I've ever had. But I'm afraid that poor Sir Henry didn't enjoy himself. Did you, Sir Henry?
What?
You were not quite so happy last night as I was, were you?
Happy? Can I have a large hot whiskey, Peter?
Certainly, Henry, certainly.
And a hot bath.
Oh, yes, you can have that too. Can't you, my dear?
Oh, quite. Is that all you want, Henry?
No, I want to go to bed. What day is this?
Saturday.
Well, I think if I'm called on Tuesday morning, that will be quite early enough.
Oh, Jenny, bring a large hot whiskey for Sir Henry.
Yes, sir.
Sir Henry doesn't like the sea.
I like it in its proper place, which is not inside me. I seem to have swallowed half the contents of the ocean.
What on earth happened?
Well, I thought I'd like to row.
That was the entire cause of the trouble. You can't row.
Oh, yes, I can. I once rowed Chim on the Serpentine.
Yes, and I've never forgotten it. I gave myself up for lost that day.
But of course, no one can row without oars.
Without oars?
Yes, you see, I lost them. We were going along quite nicely, but when we got outside the bay, the sea became very boisterous, and I was so surprised at it that I let the oars go overboard, and they just drifted away, and we couldn't get them. Oh, thank you. Very nice, Sir Henry. You should have some.
That was for me.
Oh, I'm sorry. I've taken his whiskey. You know I'm like that. I always take things that are meant for other people.
You shall have some more, Henry.
I haven't had any yet.
Bring another glass for Sir Henry, Jenny.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm afraid I still do not understand what happened last night.
Oh, I don't wonder. It's frightfully complicated. Well, I don't mind for myself, of course. I enjoyed it, but poor Sir Henry didn't like it at all.
No, I didn't. At my time of life, a man does not get any pleasure out of all-night adventures on the ocean.
But Sir Henry, I reminded you of the difference in our ages, and yet you went on making love to me.
I absolutely did.
You know you did. I said, no, Sir Henry, you're much older than I am, and it is quite impossible.
Oh!
Henry, I do not wish to take advantage of my position as your elder brother, but I must say you have disappointed me.
Have I? Have I, indeed?
Yes, I think that if you wished to stay out all night with a lady, you might have done it in another parish.
Whiskey, sir.
I am not a censorious man, as a rule.
I'm sure you're not. You've such a kind face. I told Sir Henry there would be talk in the village, but I was sure you would be kind and understanding.
Yes, I think I have a sympathetic disposition.
You have. The moment the oars drifted away, I leapt forward and I said to Henry, this is a very embarrassing situation. There will be talk about it all over the country, but Canon Considine will understand. I'm sorry to say Sir Henry used very bad language. Hush, Sir Henry. I hardly like to repeat to you what he said.
Well, perhaps you'd better not try.
He said, damn.
Oh, well, perhaps the objurgation was excusable in the circumstances.
Do you think so? Then, Sir Henry, I forgive you.
Thank you. I might have used worse language and been excused. You almost pitched me into the sea. I was trying to recover the oars, and she upset the balance of the boat by getting up and declaiming at me. I've got rheumatism in my right shoulder. I shouldn't be surprised if I ended up with a double pneumonia.
You're muted.
Why don't you tell them how we got back to land?
But what happened after the oars were lost? How did you get back to land?
That was wonderful. We drifted about for a while, just drifting and drifting further away from land, and the little boat went up and down like that, Jim.
Oh, no, don't.
And Sir Henry's language became very explicit. I suppose he thought he was back in Andabar.
I didn't think anything of the sort. I knew perfectly well where I was, lost at sea with you.
Well, if you were lost at sea with me, I also was lost at sea with you. But I remembered that I was British, and I didn't give way. I said to myself, Mary, whatever happens, be British. And I, all the time that Sir Henry was swearing, horribly, I kept on saying, I'm British, I'm British, I'm British. And that helped me wonderfully. People have had statues put up to them for less than that.
But won't you please tell us?
Well, it's very difficult to keep to the thread of the story if I've interrupted every second. You all forget I've had a very agitatious night.
What sort of a night?
Agitatious.
There's no such word.
Well, yes, there is. I've just made it up. I had to keep up Sir Henry's courage as well as my own.
My courage does not require any support, either from you or anybody else.
Oh, Sir Henry. Oh, Sir Henry. How can you say such a thing? I realized last night that you're not the kind of man on whom a woman can depend in the hour of danger. But I thought you told the truth.
So I do.
Then you must admit that you're in a funk.
If I was in a funk, which I denied, it was entirely on your account.
On my account? Oh, how I've misjudged you.
And don't touch me there. I told you I'd got rheumatism in my right shoulder.
I'm so sorry. You poor thing. He's contracted rheumatism for my sake.
Oh, yes, but we still do not know how you got rescued.
True. And it's my fault. I talk too much, and I always wander away from the point. An author once said to me that conversation should be like a ball which is tossed from one person to another. Like this. But that isn't what I do. No, I toss the ball up and down. Just like that. And of course, there isn't any conversation, just a monologue. And people get so annoyed about it. Do you think I might go to my room, change my clothes?
I'll come with you in case you need help.
Thank you. Sir Henry, I forgive you freely.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
But it must never happen again.
I'll take damn good care it doesn't.
You see? He's sorry. You'll forgive him, won't you?
But we still do not know.
Mr. Henry will tell you. He's very good at explanations. He told me a great deal about the history of marriage in Andabar. Oh, that was before I lost the oars. Such an interesting subject.
What a very remarkable woman.
Oh, thank you, Uncle Henry.
What on earth's the matter with you?
I know you did it all for my sake, and I'm very grateful to you.
Did it all for your sake?
If you imagine I spent a miserable night on the sea for your benefit, Sheila, you're very much mistaken.
What did you do it for?
Do you think I did it on purpose, you fool?
Who's a fool?
You are. You're asking such damn silly questions.
Oh, Henry.
Look, you've been told by her herself that she lost the oars. I believe she lost them purposely. I'd believe anything of that woman. She spent half the night reviling me for losing her, and the other half telling me horrible stories of the torture suffered by people who've been lost at sea.
Her conversation is certainly varied in character.
Yes, she told me a story about a girl adrift on a raft in the Indian Ocean with 10 men who became exceedingly thirsty and decided to kill her and drink her blood.
She's got an imagination, you know. She's got an imagination.
I should think so too. Sheila, my dear, wouldn't you like to go into the garden?
No, Uncle Peter, I wouldn't.
You know, that was her idea of chatty conversation. After we'd been drifting about for what seemed hours, I saw one of our trawlers. I yelled to the fishermen and they took us aboard. They wanted to bring us ashore at once, but she said it would be wicked to interfere with the food supplies of the nation and insisted on stopping out until they'd pulled their nets. Well, of course she was right. And they made her as comfortable as they could and gave her a hot drink. I got shoved into a corner with a lot of mackerel. You know, I shall never be able to eat mackerel again. I'm covered with scales. I smell like a fishmonger. But the more uncomfortable I was, the more cheerful she became. And at one period of the night, she started to recite the Ancient Mariner.
Well, all's well that ends well. If it has ended well, of course. That remains to be seen.
Ah, Uncle Henry.
Ah, Geoffrey.
I should like some explanation of your amazing behavior last night. Are you aware that I had an appointment with Mrs. Westlake?
I am. And I'd like to know why the hell you don't keep your appointments.
Don't be brazen, Uncle Henry. I want an explanation from you.
Well, you won't get one.
You took Mrs. Westlake out last night and compromised her.
I did nothing of the kind. If anyone was compromised, it was me.
My standard of decent behaviour, Uncle Henry, seems to be different from yours. Father, a member of your family has placed Mrs. Westlake in an unfortunate position.
I agree, Geoffrey, that the position is unfortunate, but I don't quite see what we can do about it.
Well, I can. One of us must offer to marry her.
Good.
Oh, good heavens.
Either Uncle Henry
No, no.
or I.
You? Why on earth should you marry her?
Well, if Uncle Henry won't, I must. Somebody's got to do it. Father's out of the question.
Oh, I hope so.
Uncle Henry, you'll have to marry her.
Why? Wasn't my fault she lost the oars.
You shouldn't have let her lose them. Any man who is a man can control a pair of oars.
Here, what's all this talk about getting married? Who's going to marry her and why?
Uncle Henry is, because he kept her out all night.
Well, he couldn't help it, could he?
That's what I've been telling them. The circumstances were quite entirely beyond my control. I will not marry Mrs. Westlake. I've spent a very uncomfortable night on a heap of offensive fish. I think I've done my bit.
But think of the publicity, Uncle Henry.
That's what I'm thinking of it. It's the best piece of publicity I've ever heard of in my life. My whole of my theatrical career.
What do you mean?
Why, this story will be a magnificent advertisement.
What?
When I get back to town, I'll put our press agent onto it.
Now, wait a minute. Are you proposing to publish this affair in the press?
Well, you don't think I'm going to waste it, do you? I thought she was up to something when she took you out in a boat. Have you got a photograph of yourself, Andy?
Now, look here, Mr. Hobbs.
I've got an idea. How about having you and her photographed in your oilskins in the boat with the fishermen?
And the mackerel.
Yes, they could both be holding up one in their hands. It's a very good idea of yours, Considine.
Miss Mims.
My God.
Sir Henry, I'm so glad you haven't been drowned.
I'm beginning to wonder whether I am.
The moment I heard the dreadful news, I put on my uniform and mobilized the Girl Guides. They're outside now, waiting for orders.
Well, for heaven's sake, demobilize them at once.
Isn't there anything we can do for you?
Nothing, except go home.
Ah, I wish we'd rescued you. It would have been such a feather in our cap. Can't we do something for Mrs. Westlake?
No one can do anything for Mrs. Westlake. No one.
Oh, what a pity. We were just pining to do something for somebody. Oh, Mr. Hobbs.
No, you can't do anything for me.
Oh, I want to thank you for the beautiful speech you made last night. The girls loved it.
Loved it?
When you told them that they ought to be kind to their elders because they too would one day be old, you touched a chord in my heart, and I'm not ashamed to say I almost broke down.
Oh, I hope not.
I just wanted to say thank you.
Not at all. I'm always happy to oblige.
I suppose I shall have to send the girls home. They'll be so disappointed. Isn't there anything we can do for some of you? Oh, very well. If Mrs. Westlake is ever in a similar position in this district, I hope she'll let us know. We'll do our best for her.
Yes, I'm sure you will. May I see you out?
Oh, Mr. Hobbs, is it true that theatrical life is full of temptations?
No one's ever tried to tempt me.
Never.
No.
Oh, then I have been cruelly misinformed. Good morning.
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 That woman's determined to rescue somebody from something.
Hobbs, before Miss Mims came in, you expressed your intention of making a newspaper story out of my misadventure last night.
Yes, Sir Henry.
I warn you, Mr. Hobbs, that if you print one word of the affair, I will prosecute you.
Thank you, Sir Henry. I knew you wouldn't let me down.
What do you mean?
Why, a prosecution will just put the finishing touch to it. Thank you, Sir Henry.
Don't be an idiot.
There's more important matters on hand to be settled. Which of us is going to marry Mrs. Westlake? You, Uncle Henry, or me?
No, 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 don't start that again. We don't want a marriage. We want a stunt.
Uncle Henry.
I have contracted rheumatic shoulder for Mrs. Westlake's sake. I think my obligation to her ends there. Mildred signals that the bath is ready. Thank you, Mildred, and understand, Mr. Hobbs. I absolutely forbid you to make any mention of my name in the public press.
Now, that's what I call selfish.
Perhaps you do not appreciate our desire for privacy.
I do not.
Well, nevertheless, it is a real desire, and I must join my brother in asking you not to publish anything about this very unpleasant incident.
Flying in the face of Providence, that's what I call it.
In my opinion, Mr. Hobbs, both as a priest and as a man, Providence had nothing whatever to do with it.
What's happened now?
Mr. Hobbs wishes to put an account of last night's affair in the newspapers. Oh, and Geoffrey thinks that someone ought to marry Mrs. Westlake, either he or Henry.
Now, that's a silly stunt, if you like. The public don't take no interest in marriage. But if they only knew that Mrs. Westlake had been out all night in a rowing boat with Sir Henry, well, our next production would be a terrific success. Why, even Shakespeare would be popular with an advertisement like that.
My dear Geoffrey, it isn't necessary for you to imitate your uncle in folly.
This is a matter of principle and honor.
When people begin to talk like that, I know something awful is going to happen. You're happy here, aren't you? What do you want to go and ruin everything for?
I'm not thinking of happiness. I'm thinking of the respect due to a lady.
Geoffrey, you're so middle class.
You said Mrs. Westlake was middle-aged. Now I'm middle class. You seem to have a very middling sort of mind.
I don't suppose Mrs. Westlake will feel flattered when she hears you propose to marry her out of charity.
What did you say?
Mrs. Westlake, will you marry me?
Good heavens.
Geoffrey.
Now, look here.
Will you marry me?
Jim, what have you been doing?
Me? I don't know you go blaming me for this. I ain't done nothing.
Well, evidently something has happened since I left the room. People don't ask you to marry them just because they can't think of anything else to say.
Well, as far as I can make out, that's just what they do. They've turned down a perfectly good publicity stunt, and now they want to work off this rotten proposal of marriage to save your reputation.
My reputation? Who's going to save it?
He wants to save you from his Uncle Henry.
But I don't want to be saved from him. Where is it?
Having a bath.
Fetch him down at once.
Well, that's hardly a feasible proposition at the moment, Mrs. Westlake, but no doubt my brother will consent to meet you a little later in the morning. I trust you will overlook my son's romantic proposal.
No, I will not overlook it. I accept it.
You accept it? No.
But you can't really mean it.
I accept your proposal, Geoffrey.
Wait a minute. You have another chance, you know. There is Uncle Henry. What he said was, if his Uncle Henry didn't marry you, he would.
Uncle Henry has refused to marry her.
What? Refused to marry me?
Yes.
But I haven't asked him to marry me.
No, I did that.
You? Really, Geoffrey, you seem to be very generous with what doesn't belong to you.
Well, I felt it was the duty of one of us to, well, at least to get engaged to you. I thought Uncle Henry would realize that it was up to him, as he'd taken you out and lost you, but he refused, so I must marry you.
But don't you want to?
Oh, yes, of course I want to, of course.
Well, I think you might be a little more enthusiastic about it. I don't want to marry anyone who isn't keen. I'm surprised at your Uncle Henry. After keeping me out all night with a lot of fish and using language that no man ought to use to any woman who isn't his wife, I should have thought he'd be the first to propose to me. I never dreamt when I came here yesterday that this would happen to me. When are we to be married?
So I haven't thought of that yet.
Well, isn't it time you did? I must say, I think the whole business has been arranged in a very casual manner. Chim,
No, I'm not on in this act.
I must have someone to look after my interests.
I'm a businessman, not a matrimonial agent, and I don't want to get mixed up with any marriage.
No, this is all very ridiculous. Here we are, apparently intelligent, grown-up people, behaving like a lot of lunatics.
That's romance, Mrs. Considine.
I was asked to marry Geoffrey, and as you all seem to expect it of me, I agreed. I didn't think I should be called a lunatic. I may be unselfish, but I am not mad.
Yes, Jenny?
Please, ma'am. Sir Henry wants to know if he can speak to Mrs. Westlake alone for a few minutes. He isn't dressed.
Then I think you'd better all be present.
He's got his pajamas and dressing gown on, ma'am.
Very well, I'll see him.
Thank you, ma'am.
I've never known Henry to behave like this before. He's always been a model of correctness and good taste. I'm afraid, Mrs. Westlake, you have a very disturbing effect on people. Come, my dear, we'll go into the garden and leave Mrs. Westlake with Henry.
But I object to leaving her alone with him. That's how this trouble began.
I've only been engaged to you for 5 minutes, Geoffrey, but already you're treating me as your private property. I shall begin to talk like a suffragette in a minute. Kindly go into the garden with your father and mother and take Chim with you. What are you thinking about, Chim?
I was wondering how long it would take to get you back to London.
Well, go and wander in the garden.
Now, this is the last time I ever come into the country.
Mrs. Westlake,
Yes?
Geoffrey doesn't want to marry you, not really. He wants to marry me.
What a pity he doesn't know it.
He proposed to you just out of charity.
What a funny thing to do.
Couldn't you let him off?
No. He's asked me to marry him, and I will. His blood be on his own head.
I want him to marry me.
Evidently, he doesn't share your wish.
You're frightfully hard, Mrs. Westlake. You don't mind what you do or say.
Oh.
He doesn't care for you, really. I'm frightfully miserable.
What? You're crying.
I love him, that's all.
Oh, my poor girl. I'm sorry I've been unkind to you. I don't want to marry your Geoffrey. He's such a prig.
But they all are at that age, if they're any good. I'm sure he'd fall in love with me if you weren't here.
But isn't he in love with you already?
No, I thought he was until you came. It's hard to tell nowadays whether a man's in love with you or just bored. Of course, if I thought you could make him happy.
But I couldn't. Oh, I couldn't.
That's what I thought. So I hoped you'd marry Uncle Henry, if you had to marry anybody.
You don't mind whether he's happy or not?
Well, he's older than Geoffrey, and he's had so much experience of life out in Antibar.
I see.
If you could only bring yourself to marry Uncle Henry, it would be awfully sporting of you.
I don't know that I'm quite so sporting as that, but I'll think about it.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Now run along. I think I hear him coming.
Mrs. Westlake. Mary.
Good heavens.
What's up?
Oh, nothing. Nothing. I've just realized why Joseph's brethren sold him into captivity.
Oh, why?
His coat of many colors. What do you want?
I want to speak to you seriously. Now sit down, won't you?
Very well.
I couldn't rest until I'd asked you to forgive me.
Forgive you?
Yes. While I was in my bath, I suddenly said to myself, "You've treated her abominably, and I could hardly wait until I was dry before asking your pardon."
I'm glad you were able to restrain yourself, Sir Henry.
Sir Henry? Oh, my dear Mary, I was Harry to you last night.
Yes, but a great deal has happened since then.
Yes, I know, but why not let the dead past bury its dead? Mary, will you forgive me and marry me?
Marry you?
Yes, forgive me and be my wife.
Really, there seems to be something about this house.
Mind you, I'm not asking you to marry me out of chivalry
I hope not.
or to defend your character. I realize that that is impossible. I don't quite mean what I seem to be saying. What I mean is, I want you to marry me for a purely selfish reason, because it would be very nice for me.
How well you put it.
Will you marry me?
Sir Henry.
No.
Very well then, Harry. I will.
Thank you. Thank you, my dear. Now, I can go back to bed with a clear conscience.
Hadn't we better tell the others?
Yes, we might as well.
Cooey! Cooey! They'll all be very surprised to hear the news, especially Geoffrey.
I expect so.
Would you mind shutting the windows, Geoffrey? I'm afraid the draft may be bad for Harry. Thank you. I've called you all in to say that Sir Henry has proposed to me.
What?
It's something in the air, you know. That's what it is.
And I've accepted him.
But you're engaged to me.
Oh, good heavens, Harry, I forgot to tell you that I'm engaged to Geoffrey. I suppose I'd better break it off.
My dear Mary.
Look here, Uncle Henry. This is the second time you've butted into my affairs.
It's really your fault, Chim. You're my business manager, but you wouldn't help me.
It isn't my fault if you go and accept engagements without looking at your contracts.
Well, what's to be done?
Uncle Henry can go back to Andabar or anywhere else he likes and you'll marry me.
But won't that be awfully hard on poor Harry?
Of course it will. And I'm not going to let it happen to me. It was very careless of you, Mary, to get engaged to me before you'd broken up with Geoffrey. But since you forgot.
A very singular thing to forget, I would say.
Well, people do forget things, Canon.
Oh, yes, but an engagement. I used to think this parish was very restful, but since yesterday it's become almost licentious. Whether you're engaged to Geoffrey or Henry or to no one. Now, my dear lady, do try to think seriously about solemn things. To which of them are you betrothed?
I can't marry both of them.
Well, you should have thought of that before becoming engaged to them simultaneously. I don't think it's nice to get engaged to people in such rapid succession. It's a sign of the restlessness of our time, this craving for novelty.
Well, it's not much of a novelty to be engaged to Harry. And now that we're engaged, Harry, you might go and get dressed.
But I haven't had any sleep.
I haven't had any breakfast.
None of us have had any breakfast.
You understand, Mary? I consider that you and I are still engaged, and I will not release you.
You're very obstinate, Geoffrey. Harry, you got me into this, so you must just get me out of it.
I got you into it.
Yes. If you hadn't proposed to me, I shouldn't have accepted you.
But, well, God bless my soul, you don't accept everybody who proposes to you.
Yes, nearly always. Unless, of course, there's something very wrong about them. People look so pathetic when they're proposing to you, and I haven't the heart to refuse them. I thought you looked absolutely pitiable when you asked me to marry you.
Pitiable? Me?
And I felt so sorry for you.
Do you mean to, you mean to say you accepted me out of pity?
Well, I always accept people out of pity. What other reason is there for accepting them?
I thought you cared for me.
Well, so I do. I think you're very nice. Very nice. Just like Geoffrey and Chim.
No, leave me out of it. I never proposed to you. With the help of heaven, I never will.
All this talk won't solve my problem. Here I am engaged to two men at once, and they're both threatening to fight for me, and nobody does anything. You all stand about looking on, and at any moment Geoffrey may kill Harry.
It's just as likely to be by the other way around. I see no reason why there should be any fighting at all. But if there is, I don't intend to be the corpse.
She's engaged to me, and that's final.
Mary, what do you say to this?
Well, so long as I'm engaged to somebody, I don't mind.
Oh, yes. But to which of them? You can't be engaged to two men at once.
Why not? There's no law against being engaged to more than one person at once, particularly if you don't intend to marry them.
You're not going to marry me?
Both of you, darling. I think you're all very nice. You're young and handsome, and Harry's very well preserved.
Anybody think he was jam?
Well, which of them is it to be? Geoffrey or Henry? Do please decide quickly. I'm feeling faint with hunger.
Oh, my poor Canon, I'm keeping you from your breakfast. We're supposing we settle it after we've had something to eat.
This is ludicrous. Mrs. Westlake, I release you from your engagement to me.
Are you going to jilt me?
No, I sacrifice, I give you up to Geoffrey.
Then I'm still engaged to you, Geoffrey.
Thank you, Uncle Henry.
Food! I hope there are mackerel for breakfast.
Mackerel!
Let's go.
Come along, Mary.
Oh, you go first. I'm coming with Sheila.
Mrs. Westlake.
Wait, silly girl. I haven't finished yet.
But you're engaged to Geoffrey.
At the moment, yes. But who knows to whom I shall be engaged this afternoon?
Act 4. We are again in the garden on the afternoon of the same day. Canon Considine is seated in a corner reading a magazine. Mrs. Considine, carrying all the garment on which she was working in the first act, enters from the house. As she does so, she sees her husband.
Where are the others, Peter?
I don't know, my dear. I don't know. Have you any idea how much longer Mrs. Westlake and Mr. Hobbs are going to stay?
I think they're going on Monday, but I shouldn't be disappointed if they went today.
No, I'm not. I hope I'm not inhospitable, but I'm afraid I'm not so anxious for interesting company as I used to be. I'm not happy about these engagements of Mrs. Westlake's. Do you know which of them is in force at the moment?
Geoffrey's, I think.
I wish it were Henry's. You can hardly hope in the course of nature to live as long as Geoffrey.
Is that someone coming here?
Oh, I hope not.
Who is it?
It's a man.
Is this the vicarage, sir?
Yes, it is, and I'm the vicar.
Ah, is Miss Westlake here?
Yes, she is.
I want to see her urgently. Will it be all right if I leave my car here?
Oh, quite. Won't you come in?
Thank you. My name is BB.
Mine is Considine. Let me introduce you to my wife. My dear, this is... I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch...
BB, B-E-E-B-Y.
Oh, yes, BB. My dear, Mr. BB is a friend of Mrs. Westlake's.
How do you do?
I hope I'm not causing you any inconvenience, but I'm anxious to see Mrs. Westlake as soon as possible.
She's asleep at the present.
Yes, you see, she was out all night.
Really? Is that the custom down here?
Oh, no. Oh, dear me, no. She went out in a boat and got lost.
Lost?
Yes, but she was found again. Of course, she's tired, anyone would be, but otherwise she's in her normal state of health.
I must get back to London tonight, but I want to have an understanding with her before I go.
An understanding?
Yes, on a matter of great importance.
Well, you'll pardon me for seeming to be inquisitive, Mr. Beebe, but are you by any chance engaged to her?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Oh, never mind, Peter. Perhaps Mr. Beebe will be engaged to her before he goes back.
Oh, yes, yes, perhaps.
Excuse me, but I don't quite understand. I've come down here on important business.
Oh, that doesn't matter. The result will probably be the same. Ah, here's Mr. Hobbs.
Hello, Beebe, old chap. How are you?
I've been hunting you all over the place. I got your dress from the theatre and came down by car. I hear that Mrs. Westlake's been out all night.
Yes, she has.
Well, is there any likelihood of her being out during the day?
I can't say. All I know is that when I expect her to be anywhere, she's not.
Peter, I'm sure Mr. Beebe and Mr. Hobbs would like to be alone.
Oh, please, no, I don't wish to drive you from your garden.
Oh, it's quite all right. I want to finish an interesting article in this magazine on the domestic habits of the giraffe. Did you know that the male giraffe has a most pungent smell?
No, I can't say I do.
It's so pungent that merely touching the animal's tail or patting its skin causes the smell to remain perceptible on one's fingers for weeks.
I've never touched a giraffe's tail myself. Perhaps you're right.
Nature's a very strange thing, Mr. Hobbs.
It is. I've often said that to Mrs. Westlake.
Come along, Peter.
Yes, my dear.
You'll stay to tea, won't you?
Oh, it's very kind of you to ask me.
Not at all. I leave you to look after your friend.
I say, Hobbs, what sort of a place is this?
Why?
Well, the moment I got inside the gate, the old gentleman asked me if I were engaged to Mrs. Westlake.
Oh, that's nothing. It's her hobby at present, collecting fiancés. She's got a couple this morning. What's this business of yours?
You remember that play I showed you?
The one about the baboon?
Yes. Well, I've got a splendid opening for it, and I want Mary to play the heroine. We can begin rehearsals next week.
It's no use, old chap. I've talked to her about it until I'm sick, but it's no use. She won't think of anything but the poetic drama. Ugh, poetic drama, baby. I ask you, in these times...
What's the matter with her?
God knows, I don't. I've often told her once that the public has no use for poetry. I've told her 50 times, but she won't heed me. Your play will make piles of money.
I'm glad you think so.
Of course I do. It's one of the rottenest plays I've ever read, but it'll be a terrific success. And then to see it turned down for a poetic drama about Joan of Arc. Who the hell cares about her?
Then it isn't any good my offering her the part.
Better see her first. If I say she won't accept it, she's as likely as not to take it, just to make me out a liar.
Well, why not say that when she's listening?
That's a good idea. I will. How about terms?
Of course, I can't give her what she deserves.
I'd like to see her getting it. We'll talk about it later.
Who's here?
Hello, Hobbs. Oh, I beg your pardon. I didn't see you had someone with you.
That's all right, old chap. This is Mr. Beebe, Mr. Geoffrey Considine. Yeah. You're both in the same line of business.
How do you do? Are you a dramatist too?
Well, I've written one play, but it hasn't been produced yet.
He's the author of Joan of Arc, the piece I was telling you about.
Oh, yes. How interesting. I was ambitious too when I was young.
Now, he knows how to do it. Many a time I've sat in the pit when one of his plays was on and listen to the flapper's tears splashing on the floor.
I think I know how to reach the heart of the public. If I may give you a word of advice, Mr. Constantine.
I shall be very grateful.
It is this. Ignore the human head. Concentrate on the human heart. I've made a large fortune by completely ignoring the mind. You may be able to do the same.
Thanks awfully.
Come along, old chap. We'll go for a walk and discuss that little matter. You know, there's quite a lot to see in the country.
Oh, hello, Sheila.
Are you alone, Geoffrey?
Yes, why?
I still want to talk to you. Are you serious about your engagement to Mrs. Westlake?
Perfectly.
Do you really love her?
Of course I do. I'm enormously impressed by her.
She's older than you.
Oh, that doesn't matter. Women are always older than men nowadays. Why do you ask me these questions?
Because, well, I hoped that you'd become engaged to me. There, it's out.
To you? My dear Sheila, what put that idea into your head?
I'm rather fond of you, that's all.
Fond of me like that?
Yes.
Do you mean to say that you're in love with me?
Yes, I'm very much in love with you.
But how damn funny.
I don't think that's funny at all. It's perfectly natural.
Well, yes, perhaps it is, but you've practically proposed to me.
That isn't funny. Queen Victoria proposed to Prince Albert, and nobody'd say she was funny.
Of course I'm fond of you, Sheila.
Like that?
No, I'm not in love with you. I like you.
Don't you think you might get to love me in time?
I don't know. Of course I shall always feel for you.
Don't say you're going to be a brother to me. I couldn't bear that.
I realize what an honor you've done me in asking me to marry you. I've always said that the highest compliment any woman can pay to a man is to ask him to be her husband. So I'm sorry, Sheila, but it can't be.
Very well, Geoffrey. You know that my only wish for you is happiness.
Thank you. It's a very generous of you to say that. Very generous.
Sheila.
Yes. Oh, it's you.
Tit, I think you did that very badly.
Were you listening?
My dear, I'm always listening. Fancy quoting Queen Victoria to a Georgian poet. It's indelicate, darling. Have you seen a person called Bibi about?
No.
Your aunt told me he was asking for me. Hope he hasn't come to propose to me again.
Has he proposed to you before?
My dear, it never stops. If he does it again, I shall accept him. And, you know, he really loathes me because I make fun of him. I suppose he thinks that if I were to marry him, I'd stop making fun of him. But I shouldn't. He'd simply be funnier.
He must be a very strange man. What's he like?
He collects stamps. If you didn't know he was a dramatist, you'd think he sold pencils.
Here's Uncle Henry.
Good afternoon, Harry.
Good afternoon.
Glad to see you're awake again.
Awake? Awake?
Haven't you had a good sleep?
No.
Well, I should go back to bed again if I were you.
If you were me, you wouldn't care whether you ever slept again or not.
Harry, you've been reading Ethel M. Dell. You're so sensational.
Is that what you say to a man who's suffering, as you've made me suffer?
Excuse me, but if you're going to have a heart talk, I think I'd better leave you.
How tactful of you, darling. But you needn't go. Your Uncle Henry isn't suffering on my account. No, Henry, you're not. Not half as much as you'd suffer if I were to marry you. You're a self-indulgent old man.
Old man?
Well, you aren't young.
A man isn't old just because he isn't young. People go about nowadays talking as if it were a criminal offense to be over 50. There are just as many young fools in the world as there are old ones.
Do you hear that, Sheila? It's quite true. All the old fools used to be young fools. Henry, I'd be engaged to you again, but Geoffrey simply wouldn't believe it. You know how incredulous the younger generation is.
I'm quite sure Jeffrey doesn't want to be engaged to you.
Well, that may be, but it's so difficult to make him believe it.
What's this? A political meeting or a religious revival? Come for a walk, Mary?
Jeffrey, your Uncle Henry has something to say to you. Don't say it until I come out, Harry.
Well, Uncle Henry, what do you want to say to me?
I have nothing to say to you, Geoffrey.
But Mary just
Mrs.
said...
Westlake says many things which are not strictly accurate. I should have thought you'd know that by this time, Geoffrey.
Uncle Henry says you don't speak the truth.
I never said anything of the sort.
You said she was incapable of stating a fact accurately, didn't he, Sheila?
You said something like that, Uncle Henry.
I absolutely deny it, Mrs. Westlake, Mary.
No one has ever called me a liar before.
This is outrageous.
Jim, do I tell lies?
Yes.
Oh!
Here's Bibi.
How do you do? I may not always speak the truth, but I do not tell lies.
Bibi wants to know.
It's so degrading to tell lies. It implies that you are afraid to tell the truth, and I'm not. I've always said to myself, no matter how much it annoys your friends, tell the truth. What's this man Bibi want?
Oh,
Young man, you've been connected with the stage for years, but you still do not know how to articulate.
Really, Mrs. Westlake?
First, I'm accused of telling lies, and on top of that, you begin to stutter. What do you want?
To offer you a part.
Offer me a part in one of your plays. What's the salary? Oh, no, it's not enough.
Not enough, why?
I want a heavier bribe than that.
But Mary...
Hold your tongue, Geoffrey. Jim, take Bibi out for another walk, and don't come back until he's agreed to pay much more.
You're being very arbitrary.
Of course I am. How would anyone know I'm a great actress if I weren't?
But it isn't the way to speak to me.
Shh, 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 shh.
Come on, baby. Have another walk.
I protest, Hobbs. I absolutely protest.
Mary, you wouldn't act in one of Bibi's rubbishy plays, would you?
Only for money, dear, not for anything else.
But you couldn't. You're too great an artist to waste your talent or your genius on such twaddle.
How very charming of you to say that, and how untrue it is. Harry, you may now tell Geoffrey what you wanted to say to him.
I don't want to say anything.
Yes, you do, but you're too shy. He thinks that you and I are unsuited to each other.
Now, look here, Uncle Henry, we might as well
And
let...
so I release you from your engagement.
You will do nothing of the kind. You're simply doing it out of good nature because they're persuaded you that you ought to, but I won't let you sacrifice yourself. Uncle Henry, understand once and for all, Mary will not marry you. She can't bear you, and I'm beginning to dislike you myself.
My dear boy, we ought to love all of our relatives. We may not be able to do anything else for them.
I don't want Geoffrey's love. I want yours.
Well, you can't have everything you want. You were out in the boat last night, and you mustn't be greedy.
I don't care that for Geoffrey. If he has the bad taste to dislike me, well...
That's exactly how I feel.
I do not propose to remain here discussing this matter any longer. I'm going for a walk. Sheila, would you like to come with me?
No thanks, Uncle Henry.
You're not very popular with your descendants, Harry.
They are not my descendants. Thank God I haven't got any.
Are you going out in a boat?
No, I am not.
What a pity, because I'd have come with you if you had been.
That's a threat which I shall treat with disdain. Good afternoon.
What ingratiating manners he has. Geoffrey, you're going to take me for a walk, aren't you?
Yes, please.
Well, go and find my sunshade for me. I think I left it upstairs.
Righto.
Now, what are we to do?
You must just refuse to marry him.
Yes, my dear, but it'll have to be done in such a way that you'll catch him on the rebound. I must disgust him with me somehow. He won't believe it if I say I don't love him. His vanity won't let him.
why don't you marry Uncle Henry? He's quite a nice man if you make allowances for him.
People have to make allowances for me, Sheila, and it would be very awkward to have two people in the same house being allowed for. Besides, I don't care for him.
But you got engaged to him.
Well, when one goes into the country, one has to do something. If I were interested in gardening, I don't suppose I should get engaged so often as I do, but I'm not. No, I shall have to hurt Geoffrey's pride. And if you are able to soothe it for him, the trick's done. Wonder if he'll ever fall in love with you.
I think in time I can break him in.
Break him in?
Yes, we modern girls know perfectly well that men don't really love us, and the best we hope for is that they'll get accustomed to us and won't mind our being married to them. Geoffrey says it's a terrible strain for a man to live with a woman, but I always say it's just as great a strain for her to live with him, only she makes much greater efforts to conceal it.
Oh, wise young judge, how do I honor thee?
I don't quite understand.
Only a quotation, my dear, from Shakespeare.
Here's your sunshade.
Thank you, Geoffrey. Oh, are we going to have tea out here?
Yes, ma'am.
How nice. Geoffrey, we can't go far. We mustn't be late for tea.
All right. We'll pick up Hobbs and Beebe and fetch them back.
Won't you come with us, Sheila?
No, I'll stay here, thanks.
Au revoir, then.
Will tea be long, Jenny?
No, not very long, sir.
Is that you, Sheila?
Yes, Uncle.
Do you know that the giraffe, when hard pressed, can travel at the rate of 30 miles per hour?
No, Uncle, I didn't know.
Unfortunately, it can only keep that speed up for 2 miles, so I can't see that it's much good to it. Will there be any honey for tea, do you think?
I expect so. I'll ask Jenny.
Oh, by the way, my dear, there's another theatrical here, a person called Peepee or something of that sort.
I've seen him, Uncle. His name is Beebe.
Oh, yes, so he says.
Did Mrs. Constantine tell you there'll be a visitor to tea, Jenny?
Yes, miss. We've had a lot of visitors lately, miss, haven't we? Just like the war times, I call it. You never knew who'd be billeted on you then, did you?
Everything ready, Jenny?
Yes, ma'am.
Come along, Geoffrey. It's tea time. Where are the others?
I left Mary talking to Beebe about his play. Hobbs is throwing stones into the sea. He's got an idea that if he throws enough, he'll reduce the size of the ocean.
You don't seem very cheerful, darling, considering how engaged you are.
In my opinion, people nowadays get engaged simply to annoy each other.
I don't like that man, Beebe. If ever anyone looked like a boiled worm, he does. He's been telling me how to write plays ever since he met me. If I wrote the sort of muck he writes, I'd go into the civil service.
Ah, Mr. Hobbs, you've come in time for tea.
I always do. I have a sort of instinct about food. You know, Mrs. Considine, it appalls me when I sit down on the beach and look at all that water, even and even. What's the good of it?
Oh, it has a variety of uses, Mr. Hobbs. We get fish out of it, for example.
I don't like fish. No, all that water is just waste. I've come to the conclusion that this world has not been properly handled. All respect to your profession, of course. If I had added managing of it, there wouldn't have been so much water about, occupying good space.
Oh, tea, how nice. Oh, cucumber sandwiches.
And honey.
Do you like honey? Do you like honey?
Yes, I'm a regular bee.
Well, you can have my honey if I can have your cucumber. Where's Sir Henry?
He went for a walk.
Well, if he doesn't come back, perhaps I can have his cucumber too. Mr. Beebe thinks the scenery about here is not quite so good as the scenery in his last play. Doesn't like the lighting effects.
I'm sorry to hear that, but I'm afraid we can't alter it.
That's what I said. Beebe proposes, but God disposes.
I only said that it was a pity the irrelevant features of any landscape could not be removed, and I'm still of that opinion.
Good afternoon, Sir Henry.
Thank you.
I've thought of a plan.
Have you?
Yes, shh, just wait and see.
I hope you've settled your business with Mrs. Westlake satisfactorily, Mr. Beebe.
No, I can't say I have.
Oh, yes, you have. I've accepted your offer. Pat is back, Chim. He mustn't choke himself before he signed the agreement.
Do you mean to say?
Yes, I do.
Oh, thank you, Mary. Thank you. I knew you were really reasonable. I told Hop so, but he wouldn't believe me.
Jim?
No, and I don't believe it now, neither.
Are you going to act in his play?
Yes, darling.
But what about Joan of Arc?
Oh, I've changed my mind about that. After all, Chim is right. No one would ever believe I was only 13, so I shan't be able to do it.
Won't be able to do it, but I thought it was written for you.
Well, I mean it. And oh, that reminds me, we must go back to town immediately.
What?
What?
What? Back to town?
I thought...
Well, aren't you staying until Monday?
Yes, I must go back to town at once because I'm going to act in Mr. Beebe's extraordinary play. Mr. Beebe always writes extraordinary plays, but this is the most extraordinary he's ever written. Oh, may I have another sandwich, please?
Are you going to turn down my play for Beebe's?
Yes, dearest, but you won't mind, will you? We shall make such a lot of money out of it.
Won't mind?
Well, you wouldn't like people to say I'd taken your play just because we're engaged.
Well, are you still engaged to him?
Oh, yes. Didn't you know?
But I thought that was this morning.
Well, this is a long engagement. Isn't it funny? I'm engaged to Jeffrey and engaged by Beebe.
I'd much rather it was the other way about.
The other way about? Wish I were engaged to him.
Really, I protest.
Sit down. Jeffrey, is that so?
Well, I'd rather you jilted me for Uncle Henry, even if then have my play chucked out for Beebe's.
Well, that's very nice of you, Jeffrey.
What's wrong with my play?
Now I begin to understand. You don't love me at all. You simply asked me to marry you to get your play produced.
No. No.
Oh,
no.
yes, it's perfectly plain. And I suppose if the play was off, my engagement would be off too.
Really, Mary, I can't...
Don't try to justify yourself. You asked me down here into the very depths of the country and induced me to go into a boat with your Uncle Henry, who takes me out and loses me.
I didn't lose you. You lost me.
And then you all raise a scandal about it. You actually let Miss Mims bring her girl guides here to annoy me. And the whole thing is simply a plot to get Jeffrey's play produced.
It's absolutely untrue.
That's the second time I've been called a liar this afternoon. First by your Uncle Henry, and now by you.
I give up. I absolutely give up.
Mary, please let me explain.
I never listen to explanations.
Won't you listen to reason then?
No, there isn't any. Chim, we're going back to town at once. Go and get ready.
But I haven't finished tea yet.
Since when have you been addicted to tea? Do as I tell you. Mr. Beebe, you have a car?
Yes, it's outside.
Is it large enough for Chim and me?
It holds me all right.
Will it hold us?
Oh, yes, but...
Very well. We'll return to town in your car. Chim, go and pack your things.
Mary, you can't go like this.
Can't I? Just you wait and see. You made me care for you. Oh, yes, you did. And all the time you were thinking of nothing but your play.
I assure you it
No,
was...
I won't listen to another word. I'm done with you.
How did all this begin?
I no, we were talking about cucumber sandwiches, and then suddenly passion, anger, recrimination.
Well, I suppose I better go and get ready. There's no doubt about it. I earn my salary.
Mother!
No, for goodness sakes, don't say anything or she'll change her mind and stay.
Judging by experience, I should say she has probably changed her mind already.
She's a very unusual woman, but I do not know any human being whom I detest so much as I detest her.
But you want her to act in your play?
Yes, she has few rivals as an actress.
But thank heaven she hasn't many as a woman. This house has been like a lunatic asylum since she came into it. I think she is perfectly detestable.
You forget that I am engaged to her.
No, you're not. She's thrown up her part.
That was only because I wounded her pride. You all heard her saying she cared for me.
She cares for you in exactly the same way that a wolf cares for a lamb.
And look here, Bibi, if you
Don't you threaten me.
Geoffrey?
Yes, Mother.
Aren't you forgetting yourself, my dear? Mr. Bibi is a guest in our house.
I beg your pardon, Bibi.
It is my fault. I ought to know better. I've had much more experience with her than you've had. Mrs. Considine, rather, will you believe me when I tell you that that woman was once engaged to me?
I thought you must be in it then somehow.
Engaged to you?
Yes.
You.
It was the most humiliating experience I've ever had. The fact that I am not now married to her is absolute proof to me that there is a merciful God.
Have you any idea how many predecessors my son has had?
No, none.
Well, it's a comfort for me to think that I came after Geoffrey, not before him.
I forgot to finish my tea. I was in the middle of the sweetest little cucumber sandwich when Geoffrey got so cross and I had to run away. Oh, there it is. I love cucumber sandwiches. Don't you, Sir Henry?
Love, Mrs. Westlake, is a word I would prefer to use for higher things than cucumbers.
You're quite right. I deserve the rebuke. I don't choose my language so carefully as you do. I realized that last night when we were out in the boat together.
Mary.
No, Geoffrey, it's no good. My decision is what's that long word which means that you won't change your mind? Irrevocable. That's it. My decision is irrevocable. Besides, I shall make much more money out of Bibi's play than I could possibly make out of yours.
Oh, money.
Yes, I must have lots of money. I cost myself so much more than I did before the war. Why don't you write plays like his?
Plays like Bibi's. I beg your pardon, Bibi.
Don't apologize. I've heard it all before.
After all, it's very pleasant to be a popular author and much more comfortable than being famous.
I have no wish to be comfortable.
Oh, how unnatural. That makes me more convinced than ever that you and I would not be happy together. If I were at all comfortable, I should feel certain that you were reproaching me silently, perhaps, which would be much worse than if you said it out loud. And I couldn't endure that.
I should never reproach you for anything.
And you wouldn't be a suitable husband for me. If I were married to a poor but famous poet who never reproached me for anything, I think I should lose my temper every day. And that wouldn't be nice for either of us. Besides, I'm not sure that I shan't marry Bibi after all.
Oh, please! Please.
Yes, I think I shall marry you. Just at present, I still have years of active life in front of me.
But I am not worthy of you, Mary.
I know you're not, but you make a great deal of money.
Oh, money, money, money!
How nice that sounds.
I call upon you all to witness that I have not asked her to marry me. If she does marry me, it will be entirely against my will.
Don't snivel, BB. Oh, how can I ever bring myself to bear the name of BB?
Don't. It's a dreadful name.
You must change it.
But she'll have a BB nature.
How terribly true that is. Harry, I'm half inclined to marry you after all.
Well, why not?
Geoffrey, I'll be an aunt to you.
You're absolutely heartless. You're the most flippant, cruel woman I've ever known.
Really, what a cross little boy you are, Geoffrey.
Oh, I'm glad I found out about you in time.
Aren't you going to see me off?
I don't ever want to see you again.
Geoffrey, my dear.
It's all right, Mother. Don't worry about me. Just going for a walk across the common. I'll be back to dinner.
Well, goodbye, Geoffrey. How very sad.
Mrs. Westlake, you've treated my son very, very cruelly.
Yes. Well, now, what about getting ready?
Mrs. Westlake, please.
I couldn't do it any other way.
But I don't want his play to be turned down for my sake.
What do you mean, Sheila?
It's all right, Mrs. Considine. It's quite all right.
No, it isn't. The whole thing's my fault. I asked her to help me marry Geoffrey.
That's how I got into my mess.
Did you make love to me merely to oblige Sheila?
I started off with that intention, but I ended by trying to oblige myself.
Thank you, Harry. You said that very nicely.
But I'd rather die an old maid than have Geoffrey's play turned down.
Listen, I'm going to tell you all a little secret. Gather round. I haven't turned his play down. I've only postponed its production.
Postponed?
Then you are going to do it.
Oh, Mrs. Westlake.
I really do not know whether I am on my head or my heels.
Now listen again. My production of Geoffrey's play will be my wedding present to Sheila.
But she isn't getting married.
Oh, yes, she is. She's going to marry Geoffrey. Well, he doesn't know it yet, but she does. When you're safely engaged to him, my dear, I'll send you a contract for the play, and when he signs the register in church the day you're married, you can ask him to sign the contract too. We can kill two birds with one stone.
Oh, but what about my play?
I shall make all the money out of your play that I'm going to lose on Geoffrey's.
Then the whole of this scene this afternoon has been a humbug.
Quite.
Trust you do not consider yourself engaged to me.
Engaged to you. Now, why on earth should I get engaged to you?
I don't know, but you're quite capable of it. Isn't she, Hobbs?
No, that's the one thing in the world that she's not capable of.
Your things are ready, ma'am. They've been taken down the back way.
Thank you. Jim, you and Mr. Beebe can go and get the car ready.
Right, come on, baby.
You'll have a nice run home.
I shan't believe we're gone until I'm there.
Mrs. Westlake, I'm afraid I've been thinking very hard things about you.
I'm sure you have. I've been thinking them myself in similar circumstances.
We're ready when you are.
Goodbye, Mrs. Considine. It's been such a restful time here. I envy you the quiet of the country. Goodbye, Sheila.
You're a dear.
No, I'm an actress and I like to make a good exit. You must be very sympathetic with Geoffrey tonight.
I will.
But don't be modern. Be as old-fashioned as you can. Goodbye, Sir Henry.
May I consider that you are engaged to me?
I wonder. You see, Harry, you're such a bad sailor.
Goodbye.
Bye all.
Bye.
Give my love to Miss Mims.
Bye.
Goodbye. Goodbye.
Thank you.
And now, what are we going to do for the rest of the day?
Well, I know what I'm going to do.
What?
Sleep.
Well, they've gone.
Yes, it's been quite an experience, hasn't it?
Right. Jeffrey said he was going over the common, didn't he?
Yes, my dear. Why?
Oh, nothing.
And now, dear, supposing we finish tea.
In peace and quietness.
Yes. Do you think you could spread a little honey on some bread and butter for me?
I think I could.
And curtain.
Oh, what an obnoxious woman.
I beg your pardon? What did you say?
Bravo, bravo. Well done all. Thank you so much. Thank you, David, for sharing.
Thank you, David.
Thank
Yeah.
you, David.
Delicious play. Too bad the gremlins were
Yes.
out today.
It's so funny.
Does this thing have anything to do with the rhyme? Is there some connection to it?
I mean,
The title of this, does it have anything to do with the Mary, Mary, quite contrary, how does your garden grow?
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, well, but that's a much older thing that he used for this, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's like almost.
Yes, I'm wondering why he chose that title. So she's contrary.
Yeah.
Mary.
Because her name is Mary and she is contrary.
Because she is.
Yeah.
I was looking for death.
Engaged so many times, and also yes, it's a portrait of the actress as goddess diva monster.
Yeah. Do you want to turn off the recording?